Otaku in the Marvel DC Universe. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 326 Dead Forest. After staring at that person for a while, Liang Yue didn't make a sound because the location they were in at this time was a bit off. At the entrance of the Forest of Death, a large number of Shin'an examinees were gathered, but there were no powerful figures present. Having never fought him, Liang Yue couldn't guarantee that he could take down Orochimaru in the first instance. Besides, the other party's subordinates were definitely mixed in among them at this moment. If he really wanted to make a move, the tower in the center of the Forest of Death would be far more advantageous than now. At that time, the instructors from all sides would gather, Might Guy, Kakashi, and even the third Hokage would appear there. I just don't know if the third Hokage will believe it, and facing his former student, the old guy might not be able to bring himself to do it. If he hesitates at that time, and Orochimaru seizes the opportunity to use the impure world reincarnation, the odds of winning will become more uncertain. In addition, Orochimaru's current chakra level doesn't seem to be very high. Probably because he just switched to a new body, right? According to the original plot, he should already be in a woman's body at this time. Just as Liang Yue was in a daze, the second exam for everyone began as soon as the iron gate at the entrance opened. Groups of ninjas participating in the exam immediately drilled into the dense forest in front of them like a group of mad rabbits. In twos and threes, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura were walking at the end with confidence, looking slow and unhurried, appearing somewhat aloof. After the group had all disappeared, seeing that the ninja guarding the gate was about to close it, Liang Yue flashed and entered the iron-fenced Chunkyu. What are you doing? Didn't I tell you not to go in? Anko Materashi asked in surprise, looking at Liang Yue, who had suddenly acted. I've discovered some anomalies, so I'm going in to take a look, Liang Yue replied, looking at the group of ninjas who were gradually approaching. Anomalies? What anomalies? Those sound ninja are very strange. Do you have any evidence? It's precisely because I don't have any evidence that I need to go and take a look. Your reason is too far-fetched. The third Hokage appointed me as proctor. I think it's necessary for me to go over and take a look. After saying that, Liang Yue ignored what these people were saying. With a flash of his figure, he quickly disappeared into the forest behind him like a rock. Such fast footwork, it doesn't seem to be in the style of their Hyuga clan. Could it be that this kid has had some inspiration recently? Looking at Liang Yue's disappearing figure, Anko Materashi pondered for a while, and then said thoughtfully. The several ninjas behind her were also somewhat surprised. Although there's the body flicker technique in this Naruto world, the concept of Kingong has not yet formed in each family and village. The basic principle is to kill with one strike. Once entering a close combat mode, it is basically fighting based on experience. Even the Hyuga clan, which is known for its long heritage, combined with the gentle fist, which is the most complete set of moves, still has no concept of footwork. Even a decent body flicker technique is not available. Most of those who can master this kind of thing in the ninja world are experts, such as the deceased Shiso of the body flicker, the deceased Yellow Flash, and the lightning release footwork of the successive Raikage. But even these body flicker techniques are all for the sake of better enemy engagement and rushing, and no one has ever introduced a concept of flying into the cultivation system. Interestingly, the world of Heavenly Sword and Dragon Saber, which has a much lower energy level than the Naruto world, has done it. Captain, we found an anomaly, not far from one side of the fence. What anomaly? There are 3 corpses of sound ninja over there. They seem to be this year's examinees. What? Take me there quickly. This is Orochimaru's killing method. Ah. Orochimaru, there's no mistake. I recognize the shape of this wound, and the identities of these people are indeed this year's examinees. But the number of people in the second round of the exam has not decreased, which means that Orochimaru has already replaced their identities and sneaked into the Forest of Death. Report to the Hokage immediately. Yes. Liang Yue's traveling speed was not fast at this time. After activating the Byakugan, he hung far behind Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. According to the normal script arrangement, Orochimaru's purpose in this trip was to test Sasuke's ability and incidentally apply a strange cursed seal to him. However, in Liang Yue's view, The other party's behavioral logic was simply unreasonable because Orochimaru's most fundamental purpose was only to take a fancy to Sasuke's body and want to use it as the target for his sole possession. For Orochimaru, a young body is just a consumable. The people he can choose are actually top-notch in terms of bloodline and aptitude, but even so, he still has to test Sasuke's strength and adaptability. But this thing has nothing to do with his body at all. If Orochimaru really possesses it, Sasuke's consciousness and soul will all be squeezed out of the body. What remains is only his bloodline, bones, and other inherent hardware. Therefore, Liang Yue can almost judge that Orochimaru's purpose in this trip is mainly for his so-called Konoha Crush plan. Coming to test Sasuke in the middle is probably just a bit of his personal bad taste. No matter what it's for, it would be best if I could take him down in this forest of death, so that the side quest can be completed smoothly. But if he runs away, even if he runs away this time, he should continue his Konoha Crush plan at the grand competition side a month later, in front of a group of ninja world dignitaries, crushing Konoha and killing the third Hokage. This method of showing strength is a bit strange, but it just meets the needs of the script, thinking that he will be fighting against the real experts in this world who can be put on the table after a while. Liang Yue's heart can't help but rise. A long-lost fighting spirit Wu. Just as he was walking between the branches of a giant tree, a gust of wind suddenly blew up large swaths of branches and leaves began to sway from side to side in this airflow. Liang Yue then stood still. Leaning himself against a tree trunk through the observation of the Byakugan, he could clearly see that Naruto and his party of 3 were encountering an attack from other groups of ninjas. However, with the excellent performance of Sasuke and Naruto, the attackers did not cause them much trouble, and Liang Yue did not intend to help, or rather, before encountering Orochimaru, he did not have any intention of interfering with the exam. He just stayed quietly in the dark, waiting for the 3 to solve the problem themselves, while also constantly observing the movement around him with a 360 degrees, spherical special perspective of the Byakugan. Liang Yue was able to directly see everything around him. Chapter 327. Hinata was bitten by a snake. Half a day later, the night was already deep. Why isn't he here yet? Looking at the 3 people grilling fish under a tree more than half a kilometer away, Liang Yue scratched his scalp, a few doubts rising in his heart. Logically speaking, Orochimaru should have appeared by now. According to the original plot, that guy seemed to have run out on the first day. Could it be that I've stirred up a hornet's nest? It's possible. I've been following Sasuke and the others all the way, albeit secretly, but it's hard to guarantee that the other party hasn't noticed. Moreover, given Orochimaru's methods, even if he's not physically present within a kilometer radius, he might have other, more bizarre means of observation. Thinking of this, Liang Yue suddenly widened his eyes, simultaneously channeling the spiritual power within his body, increasing the output load on his Byakugan. In the next moment, under the surge of spiritual power, the complete Byakugan was instantly displayed. A bright emerald glow adhered to Liang Yue's eyeballs, with strands of crystalline light brewing and flickering within the special spherical field of vision. Spanning 360 degrees, suddenly intensified from faint to almost tangible, in the dark environment of the Death Forest at night, the dim light did not cause Liang Yue any trouble. Leaves, branches, and even the soil became transparent under his gaze in an instant. All the participating ninjas, as well as various birds, beasts, snakes, insects, and rodents within a kilometer radius, were taken into his eyes. Soon, Liang Yue discovered something amiss. There seemed to be a few more snakes in this area. So after figuring out the cause of the matter, Liang Yue narrowed his eyes, secretly lamenting his miscalculation, and with a flip of his sleeve, a handful of embroidery needles bought from the store instantly appeared in his palm. Gently tossing them beneath him, these dozens of ordinary sewing needles instantly disappeared into the darkness. Silently, they transformed into animated objects, like swimming fish, constantly flowing, circling, and moving around Liang Yue's periphery. Sometimes swift as the wind, sometimes lingering like silk, they transformed into a sharp grim reaper in the night. Under the control of his divine sense, they flexibly and chaotically weaved through the dense forest and darkness. Hiss, squeak, ha. Soon, cries of misery and wails began to echo in the forest. In the grass, in the canopy, between the branches, snakes lurking in the shadows were issuing their dying howls and laments. Inconspicuous embroidery needles were now piercing into their brains, entering from the eyeballs, without a trace of warning, nor a trace of energy reaction or heat conduction. After destroying the brains of these snakes, the embroidery needles immediately retreated as if imbued with spirituality, slowly withdrawing from where they entered, and then flying up again carrying a hint of blood. They continued to quickly weave through the night. In just a minute or two, The snakes within a few hundred meters were hunted down by Liang Yue telekinesis plus embroidery needles. One is the most basic spell in the cultivation system, and the other is a necessary item for ordinary people to sew clothes. Adding them together naturally doesn't have much power. It can't even compare to the flying swords and magical treasures of orthodox cultivators, which have been nourished by the spiritual power in their bodies, nurtured by their divine sense, and connected to their hearts. But it's more than enough to clear out these beasts. Too bad. If only I could have obtained a talisman treasure or something similar before leaving the mountain, like Hanzaya Amo. Using telekinesis to control these embroidery needles, the power is not as good as throwing them directly by hand. Soon, in the blink of an eye, 3 days passed just like that. Orochimaru disappeared, although his snake children and grandchildren had been almost completely slaughtered by Liang Yue along the way. This former Sannin of Konoha had never shown his face from beginning to end. It was as if the person he had seen at the entrance of the Death Forest before was an illusion. This was definitely not good news for Liang Yue because an out-of-control plot meant that the development of the situation had exceeded his control. It is worth mentioning that the Wind Phantom Dragon template under the Don't Starve mode must use the dragon fruit from the Don't Starve world to achieve the effect of stimulating the upgrade. Fortunately, these things had already been planted in his stronghold world, and a large pile had been stored in the warehouse after the upgrade. The rewards Liang Yue received were basically the same as Nana and the little eagle Rachel in the stronghold world. All were 10 free attribute points, and one reward could be chosen from a 5% bonus to attack, defense, elemental resistance, and health. In addition, after the upgrade, Liang Yue felt that his body seemed to have become stronger. However, this strength was not reflected in specific values, and he did not see any differences from his personal information panel. But it was indeed real. After some thought, Liang Yue came to two speculations about the appearance of this situation. First, it may be that the current system panel is not detailed enough, and cannot give deeper things beyond those surface values. The second guess is that the power of the Wind Phantom Dragon's bloodline may have formed some unclear and inexplicable effects on him. Liang Yue added the 10 free attribute points to spirit without hesitation. The 5% attribute bonus was chosen for attack power. The former spirit points, although seemingly a drop in the bucket, can have a significant impact on his telekinesis, hair control ability, precise control of mental power, and even the speed of learning various exercises when accumulated. The other 5% attack power is a passive damage bonus. In short, don't be timid, just do it. After stepping into the central tower, Liang Yue looked around for the first time, but among the participating contestants and the leading teachers who were obviously fewer in sight, he still did not find Orochimaru's figure. Even the sound ninja that he had disguised himself as before had disappeared. It seemed that Orochimaru had completely hidden himself. Could it be that I scared him away? Liang Yue walked slowly into the room at this time, with a calm expression, and thought somewhat unreliably in his heart, Chunky, why are you only here now? Over here. Just then, Naruto's voice suddenly came from the front. Looking up, the little blondie was waving at him. Sasuke, Sakura, and the Ino Shikacho trio from Team Kurenai were also standing beside him. Chunky also entered the Death Forest? I mean, during the test, Sakura suddenly asked. At this time yet, I noticed some situations before. It seemed that a few spies from other villages had sneaked into the exam, so I've been following behind you, Liang Yue said, not hiding anything. Looking around, the number of examinees who arrived in the crowd coincided with a number in the original plot. Among them were the 3 remaining Sound Ninja, and Yakashi Kabuto, who was about to give up. Spies? Did you catch them? Which village are they from? Naruto exclaimed loudly with an excited expression when he heard this. The surrounding examinees looked over when they heard what he said. Feeling the gazes of the surrounding people, the little blondie suddenly realized and covered his mouth. The other party is very cunning and has not appeared since entering the Death Forest. After speaking, Liang Yue looked around again, and then asked with a strange expression, why isn't Hinata here? Oh, Hinata was bitten by a snake on the way here. It was a really big snake. It suddenly jumped out, and it was very fast. We didn't even react. However, it doesn't seem to be dangerous. She is receiving treatment now, Kiba explained from the side when he heard this. Hinata, bitten by a snake. Chapter 328 Uncle Snake and Chapter X27, Eskers. Where was she bitten? Looking at the bug and bug duo in front of him, Liang Yue immediately asked. In his heart, a sense of foreboding and absurdity suddenly arose. Hinata was bitten on the chest. We couldn't check it properly at the time, but it doesn't seem to be poisonous. It happened shortly before we entered the tower, and now a medical ninja from Konoha has helped treat it. What kind of snake was it? It should be grayish-white, with black markings. We didn't see the specifics because it appeared for a very short time, But that snake wasn't small. Its head was about the size of a camera's, but this kind of thing shouldn't be rare in the forest of death, right? We saw many larger animals along the way besides that snake. Yes. We even killed a giant centipede before. A really big one. Naruto, who was next to him, immediately chimed in, gesturing with his hands unconsciously. I think I've heard of that kind of snake. Do you need help? At this moment, Yakushi Kabuto, who had been repeating the Chunin exams for many years, suddenly walked over. With a kind smile on his face, Liang Yue didn't have the mind to pay attention to him at this time, so after taking a look at the other party with a blank expression, he continued to ask the dog man next to him, where is Hinata now? Chunchu, I'm sorry for worrying you. I'm fine. Just then, a soft voice suddenly came from not far away. Turning his head, he saw that the person was Hinata, accompanied by the head of the Hyuga clan. At this moment, the little girl's face was slightly red, but her lips looked a little pale, and there was a bit of shyness in her expression. In just a few breaths, it had already traveled around Hinata's body once, and he naturally understood the injury on her chest. Sure enough, I don't know why, but Orochimaru actually placed a cursed seal on Hinata. Is this simply out of interest in the Hyuga clan's bloodline, or is it a kind of revenge against me? Liang Yue frowned slightly at this time, turning a blind eye to everything around him. After discovering the abnormality in Hinata's body, he began to concentrate on checking the cursed seal for her. According to the original plot, Orochimaru's cursed seal is actually just a means to absorb natural energy, regardless of good or evil. Liang Yue guessed that this may be the inspiration and enlightenment he got after researching a strange person in the ninja world, who seemed to be able to absorb natural energy by nature. Furthermore, it may also be a method researched by combining the immortal art cultivation method within the Raichi cave, where his own contract spirit beast is located. However, Orochimaru should not be able to cultivate and use immortal arts under normal circumstances, otherwise he wouldn't go to study these fancy things. Jugo is a strange existence. By absorbing natural energy, he can change his shape, thereby achieving many strange effects. In the original plot, Sasuke used the power of the cursed seal to grow 2 wings from his back, which should be a phased application of Orochimaru's ability to Jugo. In addition, those contestants of the Sound 5, including the later Kimimaro, should only be his experimental products. Of course, Uncle Snake placed the cursed seal on these younger generations not simply to make them stronger, but to attract these little guys to his immortality cause, to go through fire and water for him. Therefore, the cursed seal in front of him, in addition to having the effect of absorbing natural energy, seems to have some other accessories. For example, at this moment, Liang Yue discovered a kind of cold chakra in Hinata's body. This chakra is very special, different from the Hyuga clan, or even generally speaking, the product of extracting human cells and combining them with spiritual energy. It is a substance combined with natural energy, which should be similar to immortal art chakra, but the quality is somewhat mottled and not pure. In addition, Liang Yue also detected a strong cohesive spiritual energy from this chakra. According to his own speculation, this should be a means similar to cultivator's divine sense. It can be used to influence the recipient's spirit and state of mind, and take root in it. In the original plot, Sasuke seemed to have been planted with this kind of thing. In the end, Itachi had to come forward and use strong means to force Orochimaru to actively drill out of Sasuke's body. Then, using the sealing ability of the Totsuka no Churuji, he completely cleared the cursed seal on Sasuke's body, as well as the backhand left by Orochimaru in his body. I have to say, when it comes to reincarnation and seizing, Uncle Snake is definitely an expert. In addition, although Orochimaru's chakra is not pure, it also absorbs natural energy, which is essentially more advanced than ordinary chakra, so ordinary ninjutsu and medical ninjutsu are difficult to remove it. Also, since this cursed seal itself is a means to assist in absorbing natural energy, it is not a simple evil technique. Therefore, sealing techniques such as the evil sealing method that Kakashi used on Sasuke in the original plot cannot play much of a role. That's a pity you met me. Compared with innate spiritual power, your half-baked immortal art energy is far behind. After completely disintegrating and enveloping the cursed seal power in Hinata's body, Liang Yue's palm pressed on her back suddenly shook. In an instant, a small sapling entwined with thunder and fire unfolded behind him, but it was fleeting. Hinata couldn't help but gag at this time, and with a small mouth, a mouthful of black blood spurted out. Tzz. After this black blood fell on the ground, it immediately made a hissing corrosive sound, and wisps of smoke continued to float from it, emitting a somewhat pungent fishy odor. Hiss. Naruto, Sasuke, the dog and bug duo, Kakashi, Might Guy, and others not far away gasped for air unconsciously. Given that Hinata's wound was in a woman's private location, They hadn't seen the cursed seal before and thought that the little girl had only been bitten by a snake. Moreover, at that time, looking at Hineda's appearance, she seemed to be fine except for being a little frightened. Now it seems that they were really wrong. This is at least a kind of poison. After Hineda spit out this mouthful of bloody cursed seal power, her body suddenly softened and was then held in the arms of the Hyuga clan head next to her. Chunchu, is Hineda alright? Hyuga Hayashi wiped the sweat from his daughter's forehead with a distressed look, and then looked at Liang Yue and asked, the cursed seal and cold chakra in her body have been removed by me. She should be fine after a rest. After dispelling the urge to open a new bottle of ancient fruit wine and pour it down Hineda's throat, Liang Yue said, so oh, that's good. Chapter 329 Focus. Soon after, before long, the Hokage arrived at the venue. After some opening remarks and words of encouragement, the subsequent procedures were the same as in the original storyline. The Hokage was surprised that 21 young people had passed the second round of the Chunin exams. Therefore, to make the final third round matches a month later more interesting, the Hokage decided to hold an additional preliminary round. That is to say, these 21 young people would now begin an additional round of matches. This would reduce the number of people eligible to participate in the third round to 10. The referee for the matches was still the famous Lee Fujonin with a weak constitution, Heiei Gecko. Then, before the matches began, Kabuto Yakashi, as usual, gave up his right to participate. Thus, the 21 young people became 20, which would have been exactly enough for 10 one-on-one matches. However, this time, Hineda was unable to participate due to the need for rest. Although the girl herself felt that she was fine, the head of the Hyuga clan disagreed with her taking the risk, so 20 became 19 soon. The preliminary matches began. In the first round, Sasuke faced an unknown ninja from Kabuto Yakashi's group, who had already given up. This Shinan's style of dress was a bit like Kakashi's, with a mask and small sunglasses on his face. At this time, Sasuke had not yet been marked with a cursed seal by Orochimaru, so his strength was at its peak. As for the mysterious little sunglasses guy, Liang Yue remembered that this guy, apart from having a technique to absorb other people's chakra to a limited extent, had almost no other characteristics in the original storyline. Sasuke, whose strength was greatly limited and could not exert even 30 or 40% of his power, could still defeat him with taijutsu. Now, needless to say, sure enough, just as they met, the little sunglasses guy was knocked down by Sasuke with a fierce low kick. Immediately following was a swift stomp, directly kicking the opponent in the chin. Then, the person's head tilted, and he fainted. Needless to say, Sasuke's current fighting style must have been learned from Liang Yue. After all, he originally had the skill low kick, so he naturally had to practice it diligently in the past. When sparring with him, Naruto, Sasuke, and even Hinata had suffered this loss, so they naturally learned it as well. In short, in this match, Sasuke easily and unscathed defeated his opponent. The second match was between Shino Obirame, Hinata's teammate from Team Kurenai, and a young ninja from the Sound 5 who could release air blasts. As a result, Shino used his insects to block the air outlet on the Sound ninja's hand, winning the match. The third match was between Kabuto Yakashi's other teammate and the Sand Village puppeteer, Kankuro. As a result, the latter easily won. The fourth match was between Sakura and Ino. The two were childhood playmates and close friends, so they were a little restrained when fighting, and in the end, they could only decide the outcome with taijutsu. The fifth match was between Tenten, the female ninja from Team Guy with Niji and Lee, and Temari from the Sands Village. Tenten's fighting style was based on throwing a large number of ninja tools and shuriken with skillful techniques, but unfortunately, this time she happened to meet her nemesis, Temari, who wielded a large fan and was skilled in wind-style ninjutsu. She was knocked down almost instantly, and Tenten was defeated. The sixth match was between Shikamaru and a female ninja from the Sound 5. Shikamaru won. The seventh match was between Naruto and Kiba, and after some twists and turns, Naruto won the eighth match. Niji had a bye and advanced directly. The ninth match was between Rock Lee and Gaara. Rock Lee opened the 8 gates, but still lost to the Sands Village's Jinchuriki Gaara because his physical fitness was not up to par, and he even caused muscle tears, fractures, and other injuries by forcibly opening the 5th gate. If Tsunade hadn't personally stepped in later to perform surgery to heal his bones, Lee probably wouldn't have been able to practice martial arts for the rest of his life. However, this kid will probably have to lie down for a while in the coming period. The 10th match was between Chaji and the Sound Ninja with bandages. The chubby boy threw the match, and the bandage guy won. After the match, the third Hokage announced the list of winning contestants and also pointed out that the third round of the Chunin selection exams would be held in a month. This month would be left for everyone to fill in the gaps and improve themselves. Of course, although the matches of these little guys were very exciting, especially Naruto and Lee, both of whom had amazing performances, but discerning people could see that the Leaf Giant, the third Hawkeye, and even the participating contestants all seemed a little absent-minded after leaving the arena. Obviously, these people were attracted by Liang Yue's previous methods at this time. After a series of inquiries, the fact that Hinata had been marked with a cursed seal had also spread among the third Hawkeye and others, coupled with the fact that Orochimaru's traces had appeared on the outskirts of the Forest of Death exam site before, so it was clear that the cursed seal on Hinata's body was most likely his doing. And besides Hinata, Red Bean Mitarashi, as Orochimaru's former disciple, also had this cursed seal on her body. However, relatively speaking, the cursed seal on her body, as an early work of Orochimaru, may be even more elementary and immature, but even so, Red Bean, who was in Konoha, had not been able to remove it with the help and research of a group of Konoha ninjas. Now, Liang Yue helped Hinata get rid of the threat of this cursed seal in front of them in just a moment. Under this circumstance, he naturally became the focus of the audience, although Liang Yue had been standing quietly aside afterward, without doing anything out of the ordinary. It still prevented everyone from concentrating on watching the fierce battles. This situation was probably like hearing thunder in silence. Of course, in addition to removing Orochimaru's cursed seal, the small tree surrounded by lightning and fire that appeared behind Liang Yue when he was using his power should also be very eye-catching. So first of all, how exactly did you remove Orochimaru's cursed seal from Hinata's body, Chunkyu? You know, that girl Red Bean also has a cursed seal left by Orochimaru. Konoha also organized a group of people to study it, but unfortunately, in the end, there were no results. Inside a secret dark room, the third Hokage and Liang Yue were sitting opposite each other at this time, with the head of the Hyuga clan, Kakashi, and Jiraiya, who didn't know when he came back, accompanying them. Speaking of which, although Liang Yue had never seen Jiraiya, and the other party had not introduced himself after appearing, he still recognized the other party at first sight based on his unique shape. It shouldn't be difficult to remove this cursed seal. The method is actually simple: insertion and coverage, and then using chakra to wrap it and take it out of the body together. Liang Yue was sitting there solemnly at this time, saying with a deep gaze, the most direct reason I can do this is probably because of the chakra composition. Oh? Since you mentioned the chakra composition, can you tell me, what is the difference between your chakra and ours? Jiraiya touched his chin at this time and interjected. Chapter 333rd Generation, I have something to think about. In fact, it's not just me. The chakra on that curse mark is also a bit different from ordinary people's. As he spoke, Liang Yue suddenly frowned slightly, a look of contemplation on his face. After thinking for a few seconds, he continued, it should be a more troublesome power that can be converted and absorbed through the curse mark, only slightly modeled. Then how did you get rid of this more troublesome power? Jiraiya said with great interest at this time, and when it came to this question, the expressions on the faces of the others couldn't help but become more solemn. Because the quality of that power is not as good as my chakra, Liang Yue said as a matter of course. When the surrounding people heard this, expressions of as expected suddenly appeared on their faces. You once said before that you have been studying the generation form of chakra, as well as the absorption of natural energy. So, Chunkyu, have you succeeded now? Kakashi looked at him with a look of surprise. At this time should only be considered a semi-finished product. As he said that, Liang Yue stretched out a palm, and then silently activated the spiritual power in his body. After years of experience and growth, the innate image of the thunder fire wood is no longer the young sprout it once was. Under the interweaving and nourishment of thunder and fire, the wood that serves as the essence and main body has also begun to grow vigorously. In the past, the charred tree stump had now completely withdrawn from the stage of imagery, turning into a pile of nutrients for the growth of thunder firewood. And as this innate image grows day by day, its miraculousness has finally begun to slowly emerge. This will be mentioned later. This thing is my understanding of the two attributes of thunder and fire, and it is also a manifestation of the concretization of mental power. Afterwards, Liang Yue reached out and took the thunder firewood from behind to his palm under the watchful eyes of everyone, and then continued to be precise. This is actually a manifestation of condensation and sublimation at the spiritual level. I call it an image. The reason why it presents the two attributes of thunder and fire is related to the fact that my chakra is of the thunder and fire type. The reason why I can absorb natural energy now is because of this concretized spiritual perception. Then what's the matter with your little sapling? Do you also have a wood attribute chakra talent? Jiraiya landed on all fours at this time, bringing his big face closer, looking at the thunder firewood with a radiant face and asking, I don't have wood attribute talent. This little sapling actually appeared later, growing along with thunder and fire, so some mutations inevitably occurred, but in the final analysis, it is a kind of perception of life that I have gained in the process of cultivation. Liang Yue was now speaking in a monk's tone, with a magnetic voice, slowly guiding the thoughts of the few people around him in a metaphysical direction. In short, he would definitely not say that he was born with the wood attribute, and that he also cultivated wood attribute techniques. After all, compared to other attributes such as thunder, fire, water, and earth, the wood system has an extraordinary significance in the current Naruto world. That is an ability that only people with a natural sage body or those who have transplanted Hashirama cells can possess. The reason for this is probably related to the divine tree. How did you sense life from the two attributes of thunder and fire? Jiraiya scratched his cheeks somewhat inexplicably when he heard this, and then continued to ask. To some extent, thunder and fire represent destruction, but after destruction, new life will be born. I see. Jiraiya, don't interrupt. Chunky with that, let's go back to the matter of absorbing natural energy. Is it possible to absorb natural energy after having this concretization of mental power? The third Hokage glared at Jiraiya at this time, and then asked from the side almost, this image of mental power, in the final analysis, is actually my understanding of chakra, as well as some natural things. As for the specific process of comprehension, it's probably that we can no longer regard chakra as a simple combat tool, but as a medium for communicating and exploring with the heaven and earth, making our body and spirit. A special bond is formed between and nature, and then, next, Liang Yue explained his experience in communicating with nature and even breaking through innate limitations to the people present. Moreover, his explanation was not just random nonsense, but was really explaining the skills and methods to break through the barrier between man and nature to the third Hokage and others. What he borrowed was exactly his experience in breaking through the innate level in the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber world before he obtained the Eternal Spring technique. That's right, what Liang Yue was telling the people in front of him was the method of breaking through the shackles of acquired and innate in martial arts cultivation. Anyway, the acquired martial arts and the ninja's cultivation system cannot connect with the heaven and earth, and the upgrade paths between them can also be used for reference. About 2 hours later, today's events, no one can tell. Especially about communicating with nature and the concretization of mental power. Understood? Yes. What if Danzo asks? If Danzo asks, let him come directly to me. Konoha can have today's piece. That guy has contributed a lot, and this kind of thing will be told to him sooner or later. But before that, I want to try it first. Could it be that Lord Hokage you have already? That's right. After all, this old man has been cultivating for many years, and has been paying attention to self-cultivation in recent years. Now that Chunkyu has mentioned it, I also have some ideas. Therefore, I will choose to retreat and practice for a period of time. Next, the location should be in the high tower of this death forest. Congratulations, old man. If you really succeed, maybe you can live a few more years. HMPH, what is this called? By the way, Jiraiya, during the time I'm away, the daily affairs in Konoha will be left to you to handle. No time. I still have to be responsible for teaching Naruto. There's no room for negotiation on this matter. You must have time. And, you can't delay teaching Naruto. I don't have that much energy, and I don't like dealing with these. Do you think this old man likes it? If you don't like it, learn to adapt. You're not young anymore. How about this, Hisashi? You will be responsible for helping Jiraiya by the side. Yes. Lord Hokage, in addition, my cultivation this time is very important, so I can't be disturbed by anyone casually. So besides a part of the Anbu, Kakashi, you stay too. That child Sasuke can also stay nearby for guidance during this time. But besides you, Chunkyu, who do you think I should leave behind for protection? Is more suitable teacher Might Guy. Although his personality is relatively straightforward, he is a trustworthy person, and his strength is strong enough. Guy. That guy's indeed good. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, The Third Hokage. As one of the few people since ancient times who have been able to explore the method of absorbing natural power to synthesize chakra through independent cultivation, with the third Hokage about to enter seclusion to seek a breakthrough, Liang Yue naturally had to stay and accompany him, acting as a guide to answer some related questions. This process began after the second round of the Chunin exams ended. The examinees had naturally been sent back to Konoha one after another, but since the Forest of Death was a secret restricted area of Konoha, and the third Hokage was a top figure in the ninja world, His whereabouts were not something they could easily inquire about therefore. Not many people knew that Hiruzen Sarutobi was going to cultivate in the central tower. Even Denzo and others were unaware of his cultivation and breakthrough plans. Due to the third Hokage's deliberate concealment, everything was steadily progressing forward. However, in secret, Liang Yu's unusual performance had already spread rapidly among certain groups through the mouths of the examinees present, although they might not have known that Liang Yue was removing Orochimaru's cursed seal at the time. Judging from the situation at the time, even if he was only helping Hinata eliminate a strange toxin, it was already quite astonishing after all. The ability to expel toxins through energy circulation and transmit energy into the body was not something that the chakra system of ninjas excelled at. In the following days, the third Hokage officially entered a state of secluded meditation every day. Apart from someone bringing food in twice in the morning and evening, only Liang Yue could be summoned a few times to answer some questions about the breakthrough, and as time went by, the number of such summons also decreased. Liang Yue was happy to have some free time, concentrating on his cultivation in another room while also giving Hinata some guidance from time to time. Yes, Hinata has now been sent to the tower in the Forest of Death by the head of the Hyuga clan. Accompanying her was Hanabi Hyuga. The reason was that the head of the Hyuga clan, who had just become the assistant to the acting Hokage of Konoha and was about to show his talents in politics, was worried that his daily official duties were too busy and he could not take care of his daughter's safety. After all, Hinata had already been implanted with Orochimaru's cursed seal once before. He had long heard that Orochimaru had been looking for young people with good qualifications in recent years, and now he was fortunate to have Chunkyu remove the cursed seal. But if there is a next time, he will inevitably take her away directly, so for safety's sake, it's better to send my daughter to the Hokage's site. And Sasuke Uchiha received the same treatment as the two young ladies of the Hyuga family. However, at this time, he was receiving private tutoring from Kakashi. According to the arrangement in the original plot, Sasuke learned the Chidori ninjutsu during this period. It's just that, compared to that time, the current Sasuke has not been marked with Orochimaru's cursed seal. However, it is estimated that Orochimaru has already learned from Yakashi Kabuto that his cursed seal has been removed, so, according to common sense, the person Orochimaru is most interested in now should be Liang Yue. As for Naruto, it is estimated that at this time, this little blondie has learned the summoning technique under the guidance of Jiraiya. Right, Mount Myaboku, one of the three great sacred places. Moreover, under Jiraiya's guidance, Naruto should have already begun to try to use the power of the Nine Tails in his body. At this point, Mount Myaboku, Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki, both major cheats are in place in one step. In comparison, Liang Yue's situation seems a bit incomparable to these two protagonists from beginning to end, except for the Hyuga clan head's training of him and the clan's unified teaching. Liang Yue has been cultivating alone. The promised teacher has not arrived yet. In this case, if it wasn't because I was feeling that I couldn't be my mentor, then Jiraiya may not really be the one the village prepared for me. So is it Tsunade? Time flies, and unknowingly, more than 3 weeks have passed on this day, when Liang Yue was taking Hinata and Hanabi to practice and teach by a small river not far away. At this moment, a faint but peculiar throbbing suddenly came from behind. In terms of direction, it came from the tower in the center of the Forest of Death. That was a special kind of mental fluctuation, or it could be called perspective, but unlike the Byakugan, this perspective refers specifically to the field of coverage at the mental level. As someone who has been there, Liang Yue naturally understands what this represents. Unexpectedly, he really succeeded in breaking through. Innate realm. Unconsciously, Liang Yue curved the corners of his mouth, and secretly sighed in his heart that the plot of the Naruto world seemed to have completely embarked on another fork in the road compared to his own situation when he broke through the barrier between heaven and man. The current situation of the third generation seems to be only described as a matter of course. After all, although the time Liang Yue used at the beginning was short, he used the assistance of the spiritual objects of heaven and earth, while the old man Hiruzen Sarutobi really relied on his own understanding to break through. But this is also expected. After all, being able to take over the power of Konoha from the second Hokage and continue to carry it forward on the basis of the former, his own strength has stood at the pinnacle of the ninja world. Such characters are naturally dragons and phoenixes among people, even if he does not have the bloodline of top families such as Senju, Uchiha, Uzumaki, and Hyuga. His talent and aptitude are undoubtedly the most superb in the ninja world. Of course, Liang Yue's guidance are naturally indispensable. Otherwise, when the little old man third Hokage faced Orochimaru, it is estimated that he would still be in great danger even if he had his help this time, and finally saved his life. I am afraid he would not have the possibility of breaking through the innate. After all, If you want to break through this barrier between heaven and man, you must first realize its existence. Looking at the past Hokage, the first generation and the second generation were powerful, but the former was strong in blood and destiny, while the latter was in his talent. But even when these two people stood at the pinnacle of the ninja world, they did not realize that they could continue to cultivate at that time. There was no such concept as the innate level in the ninja world. The same situation later, after Naruto became the 7th Hokage. Although he realized that there was a more advanced so-called Six Paths mode than the Sage mode in this world, but he still never explored and studied it when facing powerful foreign enemies. He only relied on the Nine Tails and the inheritance of Maiboku's fairy art to forcibly increase himself to that level, but he himself never thought about the possibility of breaking through himself through active cultivation. This is a difference in philosophy. What's wrong, Chunkyu? After discovering that Liang Yue had been staring at the tower in a daze at this time, Hinata, who was accompanying Hanabi in cultivation, couldn't help but ask, let's stop here today. There should already be results from the 3rd Hokage's side. Hearing this, Liang Yue took a towel, wiped the sweat beads on Hinata's forehead, and replied with a smile. Hanabi next to him also ran over at this time, looking at him with sweat all over his forehead. So, the Hokage has successfully broken through? It doesn't seem that difficult. That's because the 3rd Hokage himself has deep enough accumulation, and has enough insights and understanding of life, so once he masters the correct method, he will naturally achieve success. Hearing this, Liang Yue also took the towel and wiped the little girl's face. But, Chunkyu, you have also broken through mine. Maybe it's an accident, I don't care. I want to learn in the future, sure. Chapter 332 Hyuga Sparks. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Everything was so calm and peaceful. But when Liang Yue followed the 3rd Hokage and the others back to the village from the Forest of Death, he clearly felt that something was not quite right. Of course, on the surface, the atmosphere of Konoha was still as usual, peaceful and prosperous, possessing a living and survival environment that was envied by other countries. Even compared to other years, Konoha now seemed even more bustling due to the 3rd round of the Chunin selection exams. The daimyo, dignitaries, ninjas, etc. from various countries also came one after another, bringing a lot of extra income to the village. However, in the dark, a crisis unknown to ordinary people was quietly brewing. As soon as the 3rd Hokage stepped into the Hokage building, a pile of important documents was placed in front of him. In general, Konoha during this period, although seemingly peaceful as usual on the surface, was actually fraught with crises in the dark. Among them, in addition to the accompanying ninjas from the dignitaries of various countries, who sometimes acted without authorization, scaling walls and visiting at night, and were warned many times, there was also a group of unknown hostile forces who seemed to be planning something currently. In order to deal with and investigate these people, 2 Anbu members have been successively killed while performing tasks at night. However, among these 2 dead, there should be no Anbu cannon fodder. Emperor Heidegeko from the original plot, because when the 3rd Hokage was in seclusion in the Forest of Death's tower this time, this gentleman was one of the accompanying guards, and facing such a situation of impending storm, the 3rd Hokage seemed very calm at this time. After all, the old guy was a figure who had come from the war years, experienced 3 ninja world wars, and had seen even worse situations, so the crisis scene in front of him was not enough to make him lose his composure. In addition, after successfully breaking through the innate realm, the 3rd Hokage's entire mental state was already different from before at this time. He was confident that he could face any situation, so, under this little old man's series of orders and arrangements, the personnel of the entire Hokage building quickly began to perform their duties and operate in an orderly manner. As the person who has contributed the most to Konoha this month, or even this year, Liang Yue naturally received great praise from the 3rd Hokage, as well as a generous reward. The next day, the 3rd round of the Chunin selection exams was held as scheduled. Different from the previous 2 rounds, this selection competition adopted a public competition method, and the competition venue was arranged in a grand arena. According to Liang Yue's visual estimation, the area of this open air stadium should be no less than a regular football field. The surrounding 3 sides are grandstands, and the left and right sides are the audience seats, which are now full of ordinary people, dignitaries from various countries, and daimyo who came to watch the battle. Facing the gate of the stadium is the main stage, where the 3rd Hokage and the 4th Kazekage are sitting upright. In addition, there were only a small number of Konoha and Sand Ninja's personal guards present, of course, in order to ensure the smooth completion of a system task. Liang Yue had already climbed onto the roof above the main stage one step earlier, that is, the main battlefield where Orochimaru and the 3rd Hokage will fight later. At this moment, he was holding his head in both hands, lying on the other side of the roof, looking at the sky somewhat bored. quietly waiting for the passage of time. He had also applied the legendary assassin stealth technique and the Taoist's invisibility technique, two skills dedicated to hiding himself. In addition, Liang Yu's innate ability to restrain his aura, which was already in the innate realm. This guy believed that even Orochimaru, who was known for his weirdness and scientific madness, would not be able to discover his whereabouts. Speaking of which, after this Konoha Crush plan is over, shouldn't I also do something? At least I can't stay at home like before. Well, in the main quest, the so-called instigator of the war probably refers to those people who are related to the cause of the war, right? Looking at it this way, in addition to Black Zetsu, Kabuto Yakushi, Orochimaru, and even Danzo, seem to be inseparable from the relationship. The former two spread the forbidden technique of impure world reincarnation, which is a standard disaster. Even in the Boruto stage, there is still this meme, and the latter Danzo, Nagato's blackening was caused by him. In addition, Madara Uchiha and Obito also seem to be unable to wash themselves clean. Danzo's sight is not easy to handle. That guy has always been elusive on weekdays, and the root base is also heavily guarded. The most important thing is that this old guy hasn't come to trouble me for so many years. As for Orochimaru, I'll see if I can just kill him later. The best target to attack at this stage is probably Kabuto Yakushi. Well, if you really count them, there are not many people in the Naruto world who can be called instigators of the war. I don't know if that old man Inoki counts. It seems that in Boruto. In this way, Liang Yue was listening to the cheers, noises, and fierce fighting sounds of the contestants in the stadium behind him, while analyzing his next plan. Slowly, his mind unconsciously began to wander, so later he simply put aside these thoughts, closed his eyelids, and rested his mind. As for watching the game with other people, Liang Yue was not interested in this. The only two worth paying attention to, Naruto and Sasuke, had been practicing with him since they were young. They are tired of fighting on weekdays. What is there to see? After a while, a burst of enthusiastic cheers suddenly erupted in the stadium below. Listening carefully, it seemed that Sasuke had entered the field, and his opponent was still Gar from the Sand Village. Liang Yue? Just as Liang Yue was still lying on the roof in a daze, the third Hokage's voice suddenly came from his ear. However, it was in the form of telepathy. Go back to the Hyuga clan. According to the Anbu's report, that girl Hanabi has been secretly kidnapped. Now Hayashi Hyuga is taking Hinata back. What? Is Orochimaru setting his sights on the Hyuga clan again? Hearing the third Hokage's words, Liang Yue was immediately shocked, and then he also used telepathy to send the voice to the third Hokage's ears. What about you? The fourth Kazekage next to you is not quite right. Don't worry, I've already noticed it. After breaking through the new realm and mastering the method of absorbing natural energy to convert chakra, this old man's body has now returned to the state it was 20 or 30 years ago. I was just looking for someone to practice with, and it's time for that guy Orochimaru to suffer a bit. Okay, it's good if you're confident. Chapter 333 Divine Thoughts Expand. After ending the telepathic conversation with the third Hokage, Liang Yue's originally relaxed mood immediately sank because leaving the arena meant he lost control over the mission. In Liang Yue's view, the standard for whether Orochimaru's Konoha Crush plan would succeed was definitely tied to the third Hokage's safety. Although Hirozen Sarutobi at this time was confident that after breaking through to the innate realm and receiving the infusion of natural energy, his body had returned to the peak of his life. The chakra within his body, due to the tempering infusion of natural energy, had become even more powerful. Although Liang Yue hadn't personally witnessed a true form of the so-called sage technique energy, the quality of the third Hokage's chakra at this time shouldn't be much weaker. Even so, Liang Yue really didn't like the feeling of giving the initiative to others. In his opinion, this was tantamount to entrusting the success or failure of the mission to someone else. What if that old man crashed at that time? However, compared to that, he couldn't ignore the matter on Hanabi's side. After all, he had watched that little girl grow up. If she were to fall into Orochimaru's hands by accident, Hanabi's fate would definitely be very tragic. Forget it, I'll leave two shadow clones here to support. As his thoughts swirled, Liang Yue quickly made a decision. With a hand seal, two shadow clones immediately appeared on his sides. Just as he was about to fly away, he suddenly had a thought and left another shadow clone behind, casting an invisibility jutsu on it. Afterward, Liang Yue took to the air. In a few moments, he disappeared from the arena. However, on the way back to the Hyuga clan, he wasn't just burying his head in the road. Since cultivating the evergreen art, Liang Yue hadn't really found an opportunity to unleash its true power. The evergreen art itself might not be a high-level technique, but the cultivation system it represented was beyond doubt. The spiritual power cultivated and transformed wasn't just a consumable for using spells. In addition to nourishing and developing the body's potential, it could also nurture the cultivator's spiritual realm, and transform it into another miraculous instinct of a cultivator. Divine sense. The strength of divine senses, to a certain extent, linked to the cultivator's mental strength. Coincidentally, among Liang Yue's current attribute stats, the spirit stat, which represents the strength of mental strength, has always been far ahead. Divine sense, expand, as Liang Yue's thoughts stirred. The divine sense that had only unconsciously covered the area within 20 or 30 meters around him instantly expanded rapidly outwards in less than a breath. Everything within a 500-meter radius was immediately brought under his control. Phew, it seems I'm still not skilled enough. I can't exert its full effect for the time being. Otherwise, with my current spirit stat, at least the area within 5 or 6 li would be covered by my divine sense. However, 500 meters is enough. Soon, after expanding his divine sense, Liang Yue almost immediately noticed the abnormality in Konoha village. Hundreds of ninjas were running around. Among them were ninjas belonging to Konoha, as well as ninjas from other ninja villages. Some groups that met were already engaged in battle. Obviously, the peaceful situation that had at least been maintained on the surface had now been broken. Silent and invisible, yet carrying a horrifying power. Puff, 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 accompanied by a chilling muffled explosion. 5 sound ninja who were engaged in battle were instantly penetrated through the top of their heads, the back of their necks, their backs, their chests, and their eye sockets. As blood mist sprayed, these 5 people immediately fell softly to the ground, while Liang Yue's figure only flashed across the sky above them before disappearing quickly in the same place. Only a few leaf ninjas were left looking at each other in confusion. Having just crossed a high wall, another group of 3 sand ninja appeared before him. At this time, this group was besieging a Konoha Jonin. However, the one who had the upper hand was the Konoha ninja. Only to see that this Jonin had a toothpick in his mouth. His name seemed to be Genma Shiranu. During the desperate fight, he was also fighting back and forth with the other 3. After a few blocks, he seized the opportunity and suddenly spat out the toothpick in his mouth, which shot into the chest of a sand ninja. Liang Yue, who had his divine sense fully open at this time, had naturally already discovered the situation here, so as soon as he flipped over the wall, he flicked his hand again. Swish! In a flash of gray, 3 ordinary embroidery needles instantly disappeared into the enemy's heads. The 3 sand ninja immediately fell to the ground powerlessly. Yo, you've got good skills with hidden weapons. Let's spar together when we have time. As a Jonin of the Anbu, Genma Shiranu naturally recognized Liang Yue. Seeing that his opponent had been eliminated first, he immediately turned his head, looked at Liang Yue, who was facing away from the sun, and squinted unconsciously. Then, he started talking, but Liang Yue didn't have time to pay attention to him at this time. We'll talk about it later. Go help the others. After saying that, his figure flashed, and the whole person flew to another residential building, continuing to rush quickly towards the Hyuga family's direction. Subsequently, on the way, Liang Yue, who had been silent for many years, finally picked up the butcher knife again and began to kill wherever he passed. A rain of flying needles would fall first when he encountered an opposing ninja who could block one of his needles and not die. Liang Yue then took out his 8 trigram twin blades. For a time, this guy seemed to have transformed into a spinning top that brought death. He turned, shifted, fluttered, leaped. His whole person was like an ethereal phantom, yet followed a beautiful trajectory. The twin blades in his hands were like 2 shining streams of light, and wherever the light spots fluttered, blood would splatter in patches. The reason why Liang Yue had to deliberately kill these passing cannon fodder ninjas on the way was naturally to accumulate experience points. In less than 3 minutes, the Hyuga family's mansion was already inside, and after such a trip, the experience bar of the Wind Illusion Dragon template leading to the 2nd level was directly filled by more than half. Sure enough, to level up, you still have to grind monsters diligently. This thought only flashed through his mind, and then Liang Yue took a step, and the whole person suddenly turned in the air. His figure shot horizontally towards another direction on the Hyuga family's side. Obviously, he had made a new discovery with his divine sense fully open at this time. Chapter 334 Sealing Technique. The aura on Hanabi's body should be heading in this direction. Also, it seems the Hyuga clan leader has followed. Following the clues discovered by his divine sense, Liang Yue tracked all the way. With his full speed sprint, he quickly pinpointed a small battlefield in an alley with neat rows of houses. At this moment, Hayashi Hyuga was standing alone amidst 7 or 8 corpses, breathing heavily, Confronting a masked sound ninja in the sound ninja's hand, he held a small hanabi who was trying to appear calm, while his other hand held a kunai to the girl's neck. Seeing this, Liang Yue breathed a sigh of relief, secretly rejoicing that the little girl hadn't been taken out of Konoha. However, after arriving at the scene, he didn't immediately show himself. Instead, he landed on the ground halfway and quietly slipped behind a courtyard wall next door. Only a wall separated him from the confronting duo. Hyuga clan leader, how have you considered what I just said? As long as you hand over a pair of Byakugan, you can exchange it for your daughter's life. This way, I can also give Lord Orochimaru an explanation. HMPH. Dare to covet the Byakugan, Sound Ninja, and Orochimaru, I see. Don't be so stubborn, Lord Hyuga. Anyway, you guys listening to the conversation between the two on the other side. Liang Yue also moved his mind in secret, quickly channeling the spiritual power in his body into his eyes. In an instant, the stone wall in front of him became transparent. After confirming the exact location of the sound ninja, Liang Yue immediately used his ability. A strand of hair on his forehead instantly straightened, transforming from a soft strand into an extremely sharp blade, aiming at the ninja's neck, and stabbing it without hesitation. Only a muffled sound of puff was heard at that moment. Whether it was the stone wall in front of him or the sound ninja on the other side, they were as fragile as two pieces of tofu in front of this dark hair. Almost simultaneously, both were pierced through. A cough accompanied by a burst of weak struggles. The kunai in the sound ninja's hand immediately fell to the ground. Seeing this, the Hyuga clan leader's expression froze, but he also reacted quickly, immediately rushing forward to hug Hanabi in his arms. Liang Yue shook the hair, cutting a passage through the wall in front of him, and slowly walked out. Clan leader Chunkyu. It's you. Looking at the figure walking out from behind the wall, the Hyuga clan leader's slightly wary expression immediately relaxed. Hanabi in his arms struggled down from his arms and then threw herself into Liang Yue's chest. Is everything alright on Lord Third's side? Looking at his daughter hugging Liang Yue's waist and refusing to let go, Hyuga's eyes twitched, and then he asked, I'm not sure yet. Just now at the competition venue, Lord Third said that Hanabi had been kidnapped, so he told me to come back and take a look. From what I've found so far, that fourth Kazakage should be fake. His real identity may be Orochimaru. By the way, how is the Hyuga family? Where's Hinata? Liang Yue touched the back of Hanabi's head and asked the Hyuga clan leader. Hinata has been handed over to the elders for protection. Everything is fine in the family. Apart from a few injured clansmen, there are no major problems for the time being. Are you planning to rush back to the arena? The Hyuga clan leader walked over at this time, pulled the little girl back to his side by the back of her collar, and said yes, Orochimaru is obviously prepared this time. I plan to go to the streets to help deal with the invading enemy ninjas. Go ahead, don't worry about the family affairs. After arranging things for Hanabi, I will rush over as soon as possible. Chunkyu, be careful. In addition to the Anbu belonging to the Hokage and the village's daily guard forces, experts from some large families have also joined the battle. The old generation of Ino Shikacho trio, Kiba's mother, Shino's father, even the Konoha route, which had never participated in the defense work in the original plot, had now appeared on the streets, jointly annihilating the invading ninjas. Jiraiya is now directly driving a Toad Gundam, confronting a three-headed giant snake summoned by the sound ninja. Of course, in comparison, Liang Yue still values the Akimachi clan's supersize technique more. Once used, he immediately turns into a giant tens of meters tall. Although in terms of power, it is far inferior to the legendary Taoist supernatural power, law, heaven, and earth, but it is indeed eye-catching. Liang Yue couldn't help but take a few glances while on his way, and at the same time, he was also planning in his heart whether he should find a chance to get this secret technique. In fact, ever since returning from the Forest of Death, the third Hokage's trust in him had almost reached an unparalleled level. Even the Book of Seals, which contains many secret techniques, stored in the Hokage's office, had been allowed for him to browse, although it was not completely open, and the allowed reading time was only 1 hour. Liang Yue still relied on his strong memory to select many ninjutsu that he was interested in, like the 8 inner gates, the Flying Thunder God technique, etc., had now been memorized in his mind. It's just that, due to the short time, he hasn't had time to start practicing yet. Among them, the forbidden ninjutsu that Liang Yue focused on and learned was those profound sealing techniques: 5 elements seal, evil sealing method, fire sealing method, 4-symbol seal, contract seal, 8 trigram seal, reverse 4-symbol seal, even the sealing technique that is said to be only used by the Uzumaki clan, the adamantine sealing chains. had been recorded in his mind by chance. The reason why he is so interested in the content of sealing techniques is that Liang Yue had never been exposed to this aspect of content before. For him, fresh knowledge and energy application systems are the most valuable things. It can be said that although he paid some precious innate insights during this trip to the Forest of Death, what he gained was equally worthwhile. This deal is actually very cost-effective. After a while, after taking a detour outside, and incidentally eliminating a group of enemy ninjas from the Sound and Sand villages, and filling up the second-level experience bar, Liang Yue came to the arena, which seemed to have calmed down as soon as he crossed the fence. He saw the third Hokage with a refreshed look, standing peacefully in the arena at this time, surrounded by a group of Enbu, the daimyo and dignitaries of various countries, and even Denzo and other old guys were also present. Taking a closer look, the little old man was sticking out his chest, with a hint of pride on his face, squinting his eyes in a chorus of flattery from time to time. He could hear his hearty laughter in the crowd. Obviously, the third Hokage's previous duel with Orochimaru should have been completed very smoothly. Chapter 335. The second pillar was kidnapped. Watching the third Hokage's smug look, Liang Yue didn't bother him during his moment of glory. He went to an inconspicuous corner and dispelled the third shadow clone he had hidden nearby. Soon, the battle on the rooftop was replaying in his mind. It turned out that the events of this incident had deviated significantly from the original plot right from the start of the battle between Orochimaru and the third Hokage. In the original storyline, after Orochimaru held Hiruzen and Sarutobi hostage on the rooftop, the four sound ninja waiting on the sidelines immediately used the four violet flames formation to isolate the rooftop space from the surroundings. The barrier of the formation prevented outsiders from providing assistance, and those inside could not escape. However, this time, Liang Yue's shadow clone had made a contribution, and a significant one at that. Just as the four sound ninja were rising, the clone appeared and took out two of them. As a result, the four violet flames formation plan was immediately declared a failure. Seeing this, Orochimaru was immediately put in an awkward situation. However, since the battle had already begun, retreating without even exchanging blows would clearly not be in line with Orochimaru's reputation. So, Snake Dude decided to bite the bullet and go on, thinking of exchanging a few moves with the third Hokage, so that he would have a few polite words to say when he retreated later. But he didn't expect that after only two exchanges, he would be beaten by the third Hokage to the point of spitting blood and retreating in desperation. Orochimaru quickly used the summoning technique to summon a giant snake to block the blow for him, thus resolving the dangerous situation. However, the giant snake was then instantly killed by the third Hokage with a Sage Art version of Earth and Fire release ninjutsu. In the critical moment, Snake Dude hurriedly used Impure World Reincarnation to summon the first and second Hokages to entangle the opponent, while he slipped away. Seeing this, the third Hokage summoned his own summoning animal, and one-on-one, directly restrained the first and second Hokages, and then temporarily imprisoned the two's bodies and souls with a sealing technique. The entire battle process was very short, only a minute or two, and the third Hokage ended the battle. In this process, the old man showed absolute suppressive strength, crushing his disciple Orochimaru with a strong posture. Even to outsiders, people of the level of the first and second Hokages seemed to have been defeated by him as well. At this time, they were all a little dazed. They didn't expect their country's ninjas to rashly attack Konoha, and if you're going to attack, you actually lost so miserably. In this case, a decent compensation and peace agreement is undoubtedly what they desire most at this time. Among the crowd, this group of people was the most enthusiastic in saying all kinds of nauseating compliments. In addition, the appearance of Danzo, this old schemer, surprised Liang Yue, who was on the periphery of the crowd. But thinking about it carefully, it is reasonable for him to come. After all, as the official Hokage assistant, if Danzo has learned that the third Hokage has broken through to another realm and level, appropriately showing his loyalty to the village and his concern for the Hokage, his longtime friend, will naturally help Danzo himself obtain this breakthrough method from the third Hokage. In fact, judging from Hiruzen and Sarutobi's current state, anyone can tell at a glance that the old man must have obtained some incredible opportunity before. Either he ate some heavenly treasure, or he found a way to prolong his life. After all, the third Hokage at this time has not only increased his power after breaking through the innate realm. From the appearance, the most obvious thing is that the old man's originally wrinkled face has disappeared at this time, and has returned to smoothness. The facial features are deep, the white hair has turned black, and the body has become strong. Even the body that had shrunk due to age has now returned to the tall and upright appearance of his prime. Also, in order to conceal this, Hiruzen and Sarutobi specially used the transformation technique to shrink himself a bit more when he came back from the Forest of Death. The purpose was to lure out the hostile forces in the dark without alarming anyone, and then wipe them out in one fell swoop. In Liang Yue's opinion, the third Hokage's move was a bit of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, full of bad taste but being able to take care of Orochimaru because of this. The old man seems to be very proud. Soon, 2 days past. The prosperity brought by the Chunin selection trials has gradually begun to decline, but the impact it has brought has not yet dissipated. When life in Konoha gradually returned to calm, a small but bad news suddenly came, that is Sasuke is missing. Originally, in the third round of the Chunin selection trials, Gaara and other juniors who were on the invading side took the opportunity to escape. Sasuke, Naruto, Shino, Shikamaru and others were ordered to pursue. As a result, this road was not peaceful. First, they had many duels with Gaara and others. Later, large war-summoning beasts such as the one-tailed Shukaku and the Great Toad of Mount Myaboku appeared in turn after a series of duels. In the end, no one could do anything to anyone. However, just when the exhausted Gaara and Naruto and others were about to end in a draw, coincidentally, they happened to meet Orochimaru, who had slipped out of Konoha. That's good. A group of little guys had no power to resist at the time, so Sasuke was taken away by Snake Dude. The rest of the people were also knocked to the ground by Snake Dude with a simple sleeping spell. Later, the ninja in charge of the cleanup in Konoha noticed something was wrong and sent people to search and rescue, and then brought them back to the Konoha medical room in one go. When Naruto and the others woke up, the time had already reached the next day. Damn it. I must get Sasuke back. Damn Orochimaru. I will never let you go. It's all my fault for being too weak. If I could still fight at that time. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it all. In front of Naruto's hospital bed, although the little blondie was seriously injured at this time, with bruises all over his face, he still seemed very energetic since he woke up, and kept yelling. If it weren't for the bandages on his body and the doctor's strict orders not to get out of bed, he would probably have packed his bags and prepared to leave. In comparison, Liang Yue next to him seemed much quieter at this time. He was looking out the window with one hand supporting his chin, thinking about the future. Frankly speaking, Sasuke's departure is actually a good thing for him, whether it is active or passive. In short, Sasuke's departure can be regarded as giving him a very good excuse to go out often in the next time Orochimaru is playing the role of a villain target in The Invisible, and he can continue to use it until the next Ninja World War breaks out. It's just that, compared to the original arrangement, Sasuke's departure now seems to be a little earlier. Many things have not had time to be done yet. Chapter 336 Nine-Tailed Chakra. Just as Liang Yue was gazing out a window, lost in thought, a shadow suddenly descended, instantly blocking the blue sky and green trees in front of him. When Liang Yue came back to his senses, all he saw was a crotch, and the kind that hadn't been washed in at least 3 days. Looking up, he saw Jiraiya squatting on the windowsill with a sly grin, his expression seemingly carrying a hint of malicious intent. Yo boys. Looks like you're not in a good mood, perverted sage. You're here. Having calmed down, Naruto was now in the sage time after his outburst. Hearing Jiraiya's voice, he merely glanced at him and offered a somewhat dejected greeting. That doesn't sound like you, Naruto. Weren't you just shouting passionately about retrieving your best friend or something? Jiraiya lightly hopped down and stood in front of the hospital bed, stroking his chin as he looked at Naruto, who was covered in bandages, with a curious expression. So you were here all along? Yeah, I wanted to wait until you calmed down before conveying the third Hokage's decision. Could it be that the old man Hokage has agreed to send people to retrieve Sasuke? Upon hearing this, Naruto immediately sat up in bed, wincing in pain as his wounds were aggravated, but his face was filled with surprise. More or less. Jiraiya smiled slightly, casually grabbed a big, red apple from a pile of gifts on the nearby table, and took a big bite. As soon as the flesh entered his mouth, the sweet juice, accompanied by a fresh taste, rushed down his throat like a tidal wave. In an instant, Jiraiya felt warm all over. Seeing this, Naruto immediately scolded him angrily. I left you too, didn't I? Besides, you can't eat apples in your condition. It would be a waste to let them spoil. With that, Jiraiya sat on the bed with a smug look, crossed his legs, and continued to eat the apple with relish, making Naruto's teeth itch. Damn it. What did the third Hokage say? How many people will he send to bring Sasuke back? Not many, just the two of us. What? How can that be? Only the two of us? What kind of rescue is that? Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief upon hearing this. Well, actually, you have to understand the third Hokage's position. After all, he's the Hokage of the entire Hidden Leaf village. Sasuke, as the only surviving member of the Uchiha clan, is important, but compared to the entire Hidden Leaf village, he seems insignificant. Moreover, Orochimaru is now the leader of the Hidden Sound village. If we mobilize ninja on a large scale, it would be a war between countries, so the current situation is only suitable for small group search operations. As he spoke, Jiraiya held up a hand to Naruto, signaling him to calm down, and then continued, besides, after this failure, Orochimaru will definitely choose to lie low for a while. When it comes to hiding, that guy is really hard to find. Then what do we do? Sasuke is still in his hands. If we wait any longer, then upon hearing this, Naruto's face became agitated, and his hands clenched tightly without him realizing it, causing the wounds on his body to bleed. However, the next moment, accompanied by his agitated mood, a faint chakra surged from his body, coating his entire being in a reddish-orange hue. The originally bleeding wounds actually healed in just a few breaths. The bruised wounds on his face also disappeared. After Naruto's injuries had mostly healed, Jiraiya flicked him hard on the forehead, knocking the little blondie back onto the bed before continuing, "Don't worry, Orochimaru won't do anything to your friend in a short time. After all, Sasuke is one of the few remaining Uchiha bloodlines in this world. The secrets he holds are enough for Orochimaru to study for a long time. Moreover, when it comes to understanding Orochimaru, probably no one in this world can surpass me, Toad Sage." In addition, Chunkyu will also be coming with us this time. Chunkyu is going to look for Sasuke with us too? That's great. Upon hearing Jiraiya's words, Naruto, who had been rolling around holding his forehead, immediately leaped up from the bed, his face filled with joy. "Chunkyu isn't looking for Sasuke with us. The third Hokage has arranged a teacher for him. He will stay behind to train, and then you and I will continue on our way." Upon hearing this, Naruto's expression drooped, and he listlessly lay back on the bed. Jiraiya then glanced at Liang Yue, who was standing calmly by the window, and asked with some curiosity, "Aren't you curious about which mentor the village has arranged for you? It can't be worse than you, right?" Jiraiya choked upon hearing this, then glared at him with a sour face. "You brat, you're really not likable. With your personality, I think the most suitable person to teach you should be Orochimaru. Apart from the summoning technique, what I lack most now is a powerful ninjutsu, something with a large range and strong destructive power. Orochimaru can't teach me that." Liang Yue is very clear about his requirements now. After obtaining the Flying Thunder God technique, the 8 gates, and a series of sealing techniques from the third Hokage, what he lacks now is actually the practice time to master these ninjutsu. If you really want to talk about combat experience, even the third Hokage, the oldest of all the Hokage, is not necessarily stronger than him. Of course, others definitely don't know this. In addition, the reason why he still needs a powerful ninjutsu is because he wants one that can at least be used to fight against Susanoo without falling behind. This is already the minimum requirement, otherwise, he won't be able to survive in the later stages of Naruto. All kinds of truth-seeking orbs and tailed beast bombs are thrown around, making it impossible to defend against. Once the 10 Tails appears, the fourth Hokage is directly reduced to support, and the third Hokage becomes a passerby. Moreover, even in the mid-stage of the Naruto plot, Pain's almighty push is also difficult to resist. "You brat, although you have good abilities and have researched something, you are still too naive." After hearing Liang Yue's words, Jiraiya curled the corners of his mouth, feeling that he was a little too ambitious. However, in comparison, Liang Yue's requirements for himself have actually begun to take shape, and he has also found the correct path forward. The root of it is to return to his original thoughts and plans when he came to the Naruto world. In-depth exploration of the Hyuga clan's bloodline power, Byakugan. Chapter 337, Ironhead, Thinking. Liang Yue, who knew the entire Naruto storyline, naturally understood that in this world, the inheritance system of the ninja lineage was at the forefront in terms of reference significance and development potential. However, if only considering the power of ninjutsu or enemy defense methods, bloodline development was the real key. Like Sasuke in the original storyline, although he strayed from the path midway and was lured out of Konoha village by Orochimaru with a cursed seal, he eventually realized after experiencing enough when it came to true combat power, his Sharingan was the most reliable. Looking at the entire history of the Naruto world, the few people standing at the top of the ninja world were always descendants with Otsutsuki bloodline, or simply reincarnated souls. Even someone like Mikai, who relied on half a lifetime of persistent hard training, plus the 8 gates released formation used as a disparate move, only reached the peak for a moment. After the burst, it would disappear like a meteor. The highest level that ordinary people can reach should be the level of the third Hokage, fourth Hokage, and others. It seems very high, but after a fight with the real master, they would lose at least half their lives. Liang Yue's initial purpose in choosing to become a member of the Hyuga clan was simple: to obtain the Byakugan. It's not that he already possesses the Tensigan. but that he seems to have found a path to evolve the Byakugan into the Tensigan in the original story. There are only two ways to achieve Tensigan with Byakugan. One is to use a large number of Byakugan to combine and synthesize a super large eyeball, but that kind of Tensigan is actually more like a weapon. The other is to possess the chakra of the Otsutsuki clan. Regarding this second point, Liang Yue has always had a question in his heart: why is it necessary to have the chakra of the Otsutsuki clan? After studying for a while, Liang Yue guessed that the key might be that the chakra of the Otsutsuki clan is of higher quality than ordinary people's chakra, even higher than the quality of Sage Art chakra synthesized by absorbing natural energy. And in the original storyline, no Byakugan has ever learned to use the ability of Sage Art. However, with Liang Yue's current situation, he should be no different from a Hyuga clan member who has learned Sage Art under the nourishment of spiritual power, although his Byakugan has not yet evolved into Tensigan. As the cultivation level of the Eternal Spring Arts continues to deepen and the quality of spiritual power continues to improve, the ability of whose Byakugan has been steadily increasing. It's just that it's still a little short of the level of Tensigan, which can automatically comprehend various powerful ninjutsu. Liang Yue felt that this must be the result of whose spiritual power not being high enough. After all, the Byakugan has been improving all these years, and this process has not been interrupted with the improvement of the spiritual power level in his body. The fact that it has not become a Tensigan can only mean that the quality of the catalyst is not enough. Therefore, in Liang Yue's view, it is very simple to make the Byakugan reach the level of Tensigan. As long as he continues to practice the Eternal Spring Arts, making the quality of spiritual power in his body continue to increase, he will eventually get his wish. It's just that his Eternal Spring Arts has now been cultivated to the 9th level, and is about to break through to the 10th level. This level of spiritual power still cannot catalyze a qualitative change in the Byakugan. If he wants to achieve Tensigan, he is afraid that he must reach the foundation establishment stage. However, although this foundation establishment stage only belongs to the entry level in the cultivation system, judging from Liang Yue's hard work in the past 6 years, only reaching the 9th level of the Eternal Spring Arts, the innate realm, if he wants to fully cultivate this technique to the end and achieve the 13th level and on this basis, break through to the foundation establishment stage, the time it will take will probably not be shorter than the 6 years he spent before. It is precisely because of this reason that he cannot reach the Tensigan realm in a short time. So Liang Yue wants to learn at least one powerful ninjutsu that can make him invincible. Actually, in terms of power, Inoki's dust release should be the most suitable, but that thing is called bloodline elimination, and it requires the combination of wind, fire, and earth attributes of chakra to be used as Fumiha. On a wide tree-lined avenue, Liang Yue was walking along with Jiraiya and Naruto. The setting sun in the sky illuminated a path ahead of the three of them with brilliance. Unlike Naruto, who was full of excitement and running around like he had ADHD, Liang Yue seemed very quiet at this time, silent all the way, and even a little distracted. The reason is simple, he was thinking. Speaking of which, since the wind, fire, and earth attributes of chakra can form dust release, which is known as bloodline elimination, then my thunder, fire, and wood also seem to be 3 attributes. Although according to the system in the Naruto world, these 3 attributes are almost unrelated, but there are no absolutes in the world. Haven't I gathered these 3 attributes now? If that's the case, then why can't I use this advantage to develop a new ninjutsu myself? Although my current main cultivation path is spiritual power, not chakra, the principles between techniques are interlinked, and there should be no problem in learning from each other. Thinking of this, Liang Yue's eyes lit up, and his originally scattered eyes suddenly regained their usual brilliance. He had never thought about this idea before because the so-called thunder, fire, and wood 3 line attributes actually only come from his understanding of martial arts innate. To be precise, that is something given by the system lottery. Since obtaining this thunder fire wood image, Liang Yue has always been treating it in a relatively passive state. To be specific, Liang Yue is using Leihomyu as a spiritual power purifier and converter. In the process of cultivation using this innate image method, the spiritual power in the body becomes more pure, and injects a part of the unique attributes of Leihomyu into the spiritual power itself. Liang Yue has never considered Leihomyu as a weapon. After all, from the beginning of his cultivation until now, no one has really forced him into a situation where he needs to deal with crises through independent innovation. There is no way. The root cause is that Liang Yue has too many tricks in his hands, and life in Konoha is too comfortable in terms of long-range attacks. He has a hidden weapon technique of chaotic red falling rain. In terms of close combat, a pair of Bagua twin swords is enough to defeat most enemies later. in order to cover up and make the people around him more convinced of his genius status, so as to lay the groundwork for his next more amazing actions. Liang Yue also developed practical combat skills such as spiritual arrow technique and traction technique. In this case, he doesn't need to consider too much even if he wants to change and innovate. He mainly focuses on spiritual power and cultivation techniques. Lei Hongyu is not even on the list. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338 Jiraiya realized. Chunky, what are you thinking about? Why have you seemed so absent-minded this whole way? Naruto had come to Liang Yue's side at some point, and was now looking at him with a puzzled expression. I'm just thinking about an ninjutsu problem, Liang Yue replied casually, clicking his tongue. What problem? Well, I saw some intelligence in the Hokage building before, saying that the Stone Village's dust release, passed down through generations, is very powerful, but it requires chakra with wind, fire, and earth attributes at the same time to be used. Moreover, this ninjutsu that combines 3 attributes is stronger than the average bloodline limit, and is also known as bloodline elimination. I also have lightning, fire, and wood attributes of chakra now, so I wanted to try and see if I could research something from it. What elimination? After hearing his words, Naruto looked completely bewildered, his eyes filled with confusion. On the other side, Jiraiya curved the corners of his mouth after hearing this, and said dismissively, lightning, fire, wood, these 3 chakra systems seem to be a bit far apart, right? According to the theory of ninjutsu, lightning and fire can be combined into blaze release. If there was no connection, then how did the wood in Chunkyu's body appear? After thinking about it, Jiraiya continued with a strange expression. Your wood attribute chakra, although it came a bit strangely, should still follow the basic ninjutsu rules, right? Besides, can you use wood release now? A little. Then use it and let's see. Jiraiya heard this, immediately crossed his arms, and looked at him with a critical expression. Liang Yue didn't waste any words here. He directly raised his arm towards the roadside. Just as his 5 fingers separated, the ends of his 5 fingers immediately extended rapidly and changed color in the blink of an eye. Liang Yue's arm turned into a thick, emerald green tree trunk. At the front end of the tree trunk, more than a dozen branches, at least as thick as pythons, quickly separated again like the tentacles of an octopus. They surged towards the roadside trees, interweaving and penetrating, dense, bulging, and at least stretching for hundreds of meters, and that piece of forest that was covered, in an instant, looked like it had just been ravaged by an 18-level gale, either leaning east and west, or directly cut off at the waist. Afterwards, Liang Yue flicked his arm, and the tree trunk danced along with it, and the nearby forest was immediately devastated. Then, he saw that the tree trunk and branches in his hand seemed to have turned into a giant whip, extremely elastic and powerful. With a loud snap sound, a forest was directly beaten into a pile of fine fragments accompanied by the surging airflow. Naruto and Jiraiya on this side were immediately stunned by the scene, and could not recover from this scene for a long time. Liang Yue then moved his mind, and the arm that was originally covered by the giant tree was immediately withdrawn. The giant tree, which was stimulated by spiritual power, quickly turned withered yellow, decayed, and shattered in the horrified eyes of the 2 people next to him. Then, all of them turned into a blue-green spiritual power, and returned to his own body. After completing this entire process, Liang Yue frowned unconsciously, and thought this consumption is a bit too much. Although he had repeatedly recovered the spiritual power used to stimulate wood release just now, the consumption between them still accounted for a large part of the amount of spiritual power used to stimulate it. Moreover, the effect achieved by this wood release, although it looks very impressive, has not been able to reach the level that satisfies him. I said, what ninjutsu did you just use? Great forest technique, or violent spear technique? It doesn't look like either to me. Jiraiya, who had recovered from his daze at this time, immediately said to Liang Yue as if he was looking at an alien. Neither, with wood release, as long as you understand the conversion method between chakra and matter, you can use it however you want. Moreover, my current chakra is obtained by converting natural energy in terms of nature. It may be closer to those so-called sage techniques. Obviously, Liang Yue's concept of using ninjutsu is very different from that of the people in the Naruto world. From the beginning, his understanding of ninjutsu and the application of spells, to some extent, is more similar to the devil fruits in One Piece, or rather, it is more like a method of using superpowers starting from the essence of chakra, After understanding the relationship and mysteries between ninjutsu of different attributes, as well as the methods of application, he simply doesn't care about, and is not constrained by, any specific form of ninjutsu. Whatever is appropriate is what he does. This is a bit like a martial arts master who has achieved success in cultivation. When his internal strength realm is high enough, a casual blow may be more effective than any exquisite move. This is a difference in realm. Then why are you still learning powerful ninjutsu? Wouldn't it be better to directly use wood release to fight the enemy? Jiraiya swallowed, and then seemed to have thought of something, his face suddenly showing a bit of exasperation afterwards. His whole person became unusually quiet, frowning, his eyes flickering. In addition to the wood attribute, I also have lightning and fire chakras. In addition, the power of wood release is not enough. The reason why the effect is good is just because of the light of the god tree. When it comes to, you just said that as long as you understand the conversion method between chakra and matter, you can use ninjutsu however you want. You put this. Explain it to me carefully again. Jiraiya at this time seemed to have suddenly fallen into some kind of confusion and predicament. He hugged his arms with one hand, and kept touching his chin with the other. Later, he even unconsciously bit his fingernails, and his expression seemed a little dazed. It looked like he urgently needed a life mentor to guide him. This state seems to be a sign of an imminent breakthrough. However, if you think about it carefully, after many years of traveling, Jiraiya seems to have already reached the peak level of chakra. Moreover, the time may have been not short. Although he may not be able to compare with old people like the third Hokage in terms of the total amount of chakra accumulated, he can't resist his own good fortune. Things like Mount Myaboku's toad summons, half-baked sage techniques, etc., have had the experience of absorbing natural energy into the body. In addition, he had listened to Liang Yue's martial arts innate theory in the Forest of Death before. At this time, it is actually normal for him to be able to touch some of the obstacles and opportunities for breaking through. This thing is about your own attitude towards chakra, as well as your understanding of its application. Judging from the beginning of the birth of ninjas, the ability of chakra must have appeared first, and then the concept of ninjutsu. So, in the beginning, when there was no ninjutsu, how did people use chakra? In my opinion, the so-called ninjutsu is actually just that the predecessors passed down some fixed techniques and methods to use chakra. The essence is to let us better understand and use chakra, but when you can skillfully master ninjutsu, there is no need to act according to the framework of the predecessors. Try to get out of the ninjutsu they have limited, and look at chakra itself with a more free and open mind, according to different attributes, and the methods learned from ninjutsu. Apply, rearrange, and combine. Try to let go of your mind. Let yourself integrate into this world, feel the magic and vitality of the world, feel the earth and the air, feel the energy in the natural world is far greater than the human body. Open your heart, try to be in harmony and unity with nature, try to feel it, be close to it, and accommodate it. Chakra is essentially a natural energy, because human beings themselves are part of this world. The things that you are confused about now, in fact, have already had answers in your heart, but they have long been forgotten in the corners of your memory in the long-term training in the past. What is chakra? Where does it come from? And where is it going? Swish. Soon, accompanied by the convergence of a surge of natural energy, Jiraiya at this time finally broke through the barrier and broke through the innate realm. Large amounts of natural energy are constantly coming from all directions, turning into wisps of refreshing cool breeze, forming a small cyclone, stirring the sky for hundreds of meters around, and finally the wind and clouds converged and merged into one person's body. At this moment, Jiraiya's expression was indifferent, and his body relaxed. The whole person sat cross-legged on the ground and consciously put on a posture with his hands clasped together, and let the natural energy surge in, washing his body. Seeing this, Liang Yue also pulled Naruto, who was completely confused next to him, to the side, and waited quietly for him to complete this transformation. Chapter 339 Rasengan? Night. Beside the road, in a newly built wooden house, Naruto, having eaten and drunk his fill, had already fallen asleep, while Liang Yue sat by the bonfire, listlessly eating roasted peanuts, his gaze fixed on Jiraiya not far away. At this moment, the lecherous sage was still sitting quietly in the middle of the road, allowing the surging natural energy to wash over him. He was currently undergoing a transformation, from his chakra to his physical body, fully experiencing the nourishment and modification of natural energy. This process was extremely important, like a martial artist experiencing enlightenment, something that couldn't be forced. Therefore, it was best not to be interrupted during this period, otherwise, he would miss the opportunity in vain. Even if the innate realm had been achieved, there would still be some imperfections. For this reason, Liang Yue had specially set up obstacles on both sides of the road to prevent passing pedestrians from entering. However, it was already late into the night, and Jiraiya's innate transformation should have already entered its final stage. It was expected that this process would end soon. Sure enough, about half an hour later the natural energy that had been continuously gathering in the sky began to slowly become sluggish, stagnant, and eventually dissipate. During the process, Liang Yue sensitively noticed that a mental force was radiating from Jiraiya's body, covering the surrounding area. As someone who had been through it before, he naturally understood that Jiraiya was using his mental power, hearing, smell, and other senses to observe the surrounding world and nature. After successfully entering the innate realm, a person's 5 senses would be enhanced many times over. And the world they observed would also undergo some subtle changes. Many places that seemed ordinary or empty in the past would be filled with different kinds of fun in the eyes of someone in the innate realm. Back then, when Liang Yue broke through to the innate realm, he had stared at the air in front of him for more than an hour, because at that time, the air in his eyes was no longer just empty or simply mixed with dust, but had become a layer of colorful, constantly moving strange existence, like water waves. This spectacle was something Liang Yue had never seen in his life since birth, so he would naturally be curious about it at this time. Jiraiya, after finishing the infusion of natural power, also did not get up immediately. Instead, he sat there with some excitement, carefully observing this novel scene by using the remaining mysterious state from before. It wasn't until the next morning that Liang Yue got up and removed the barricades on both sides of the road. After returning to the bonfire and roasting a wild rabbit, Jiraiya and Naruto finally recovered from some kind of dazed state and sat down to prepare for the meal. Hey lecherous sage, what was going on with you last night? Why did you suddenly start meditating and practicing? And the wind was blowing all around during the meal. Naruto held a plump rabbit leg in one hand and a half-eaten boiled egg in the other, asking with a mouthful of grease, what wind? I suddenly had a new understanding of chakra, so I just sat down and practiced for a while. I'm much stronger now also. Don't call me lecherous sage, call me Toad Sage, or Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya was just about to grab some meat when he realized that his hands were already covered in greasy oil, making him feel uncomfortable all over. He quickly took out a mirror to look at himself. Only then did he discover that his entire body was soaked in a layer of gray, greasy oil, sticking to him uncomfortably. His face was even dirty, and there was a faint, pungent smell emanating from him. Immediately, Jiraiya looked at Liang Yue next to him, with a puzzled look on his face. That's the waste that was excreted from your body after being infused with natural energy. There's a river over there, I suggest you go wash it off, but it's best to dig a pit yourself. Don't pollute the whole river. Is that so? Will it have any impact on my body? There's an impact, but it's the beneficial kind. The third Hokage also underwent the nourishment of natural energy before, and his body has now returned to its peak prime. Your situation is similar. Oh, that's good. Aren't you going to take a bath? Looking at Jiraiya's at ease actions of grabbing the rabbit meat and putting it in his mouth, Liang Yue frowned and asked with some disgust, it's okay, I'll go wash after I finish eating. Because it was relatively close to Konoha, the security environment here was relatively good. Relying on the convenience of supplying various materials to Konoha Ninja Village, the town was also developing very prosperously. The streets were crowded with people coming and going, and both sides of the street were also full of merchants and vendors doing all kinds of business. Liang Yue casually bought 3 grilled squids from a stall. The 3 of them each took one, and Naruto ate it very happily, even temporarily forgetting about finding Sasuke. However, along the way, after learning that Jiraiya had experienced a seemingly inexplicable meditation and his strength had been improved again, Naruto, who felt a little unbalanced in his heart, had been clamoring that he also wanted to learn new ninjutsu. And Jiraiya, this time taking this little blondie out, in addition to finding Sasuke and Orochimaru, the main purpose was actually to train and teach Naruto. Taking this opportunity to improve Naruto's strength was naturally an indispensable part. So after eating the grilled squid and finding a hotel to stay in, Jiraiya took the opportunity to start Naruto's targeted teaching. What? You've already learned the Rasengan? How is that possible? Near a forest on the outskirts of the town, Jiraiya was now looking shocked, looking at the chakra ball constantly rotating in Naruto's hand, his mouth unconsciously opening wide. This seems, isn't that hard? Jiraiya-sensei, the ninjutsu you taught is actually very similar to the spirit arrow technique that Chunkyuu taught me a few years ago. Back then, in order to master the spirit arrow technique, I spent a full 4 or 5 years. Naruto was now holding the Rasengan in one hand and scratching his blonde hair with the other, saying with a somewhat strange expression on his face, spirit arrow technique? I seem to have seen this ninjutsu somewhere before. Enough small talk. Hurry up and throw the Rasengan away and use a spirit arrow technique for me to see. Jiraiya was now standing with his hands on his hips, shouting with a face full of suspicion. Naruto heard the words, but he wasn't afraid. He casually threw the Rasengan in his palm towards a big tree in front of him. Immediately, a circular pit of about 1 meter was smashed out of the thick tree trunk. Then, he spread out his palms again, used the chakra in his body, and gathered it towards the center of his palm at a special frequency and sequence. After about 3 seconds, a shuttle-shaped triangular arrow had already taken shape. This arrow was about the size of an egg. The chakra was highly condensed, and it was constantly rotating. As soon as it appeared, it stirred up a spiral airflow in the surrounding air. Then, Naruto, under Jiraiya's solemn gaze, slapped his palm forward. Whoosh! This large-sized spirit arrow was immediately like a high-speed harmony train, rushing forward with a destructive force, with a strong spiral tail flame, destroying all obstacles in front of it. Chapter 348 Itachi God appears. Looking at the arrowhead that pierced forward for hundreds of meters, then exploded with a bang, blasting the surroundings into shattered fragments. Jiraiya unconsciously wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, his gaze shifting to the other side, where Liang Yue was sitting in meditation, cultivating the light and shadow of the small sapling entwined with lightning and fire was so conspicuous at this moment. Well, the power of this ninjutsu is not bad, it's just that the preparation time is a bit long. If the time to complete the technique could be shortened a little, it could be considered an excellent ninjutsu. Jiraiya took a deep breath, trying his best to maintain his teacherly demeanor in front of Naruto, raising his chin high and looking down at the little blonde. After racking his brains, he gave his advice. Ahahaha, as expected of the pervy sage, you saw it right away. In fact, when Shunki was teaching me before, he also mentioned this shortcoming, but there's nothing I can do about it. The real spirit arrow technique is originally a very concealed, and can be continuously fired, signless ninjutsu, but when I was practicing, I could never get some of the details right. So, Shunki had me cast this ninjutsu from the palm of my hand, and I succeeded on the first try. Naruto heard this, and then scratched the back of his head with an embarrassed look, looking at the embarrassed little blonde in front of him, with a hint of shyness. Jiraiya's eyes twitched a few times, and then he asked, you mean, this spirit arrow technique is originally formed inside the body, and can be fired continuously? Yeah. Like this. As he said that, Naruto raised his 2 index fingers and thumbs to make a pistol shape, making piu-piu sound effects. By the way, when we were on a mission in the Land of Waves before, Chunkyu used the spirit arrow technique in actual combat, but he used all 10 fingers at the time. As he said that, the little blonde raised his 2 hands again, in the shape of 9 yin white bone claws, facing forward, with a fierce expression on his face. Like this, swish, 10 spirit arrows went out like that, although the power was a little smaller than the one I just did, but the release speed was very fast. Moreover, the spirit arrows he fired could be controlled. Those 10 spirit arrows strung through that group of bad guys, and then bang! They exploded. Looking at Naruto's exaggerated posture in front of him, Jiraiya couldn't help but turn his head again and looked at Liang Yue, who was still cultivating quietly over there. After scratching his white hair, he turned his head back to Naruto and said, well, tell me the specific cultivation method of this spirit arrow technique, and I'll study it as well. After that, for 3 consecutive days, the relationship between Jiraiya and Naruto seemed to have been reversed. Naruto, who was originally supposed to be taught, became the teacher instead, responsible for teaching Jiraiya about the cultivation method of the spirit arrow technique. Because this ninjutsu involves many subtle manipulation methods related to the internal meridians of the human body, some of the chakra operation concepts even contradict common sense. Therefore, even for Jiraiya, a master who has now advanced to the innate level, it still takes some time to master it. 3 days later, Jiraiya finally succeeded in cultivating this ninjutsu. Then, at Naruto's urging, the 3 of them set out again on the journey to find Sasuke. However, their rescue journey seemed destined to be not so smooth. They had only just left the town for a short while, and had just reached the side of a bridge, when 2 mysterious people wearing bamboo hats walked towards them. A faint baleful aura was inadvertently emanating from the 2 of them. Jiraiya, who was now a completely different person, felt the malice on them almost immediately. Liang Yue, on the other hand, had already determined the identities of the 2 men after seeing the red clouds on their white-black robes. Only Naruto, this kid, still looked like nothing was wrong, holding the back of his head with both hands, and was about to walk onto the bridge with a smile on his face. As a result, he was immediately grabbed back by Jiraiya. Hey, who are you guys? Why are you blocking our way? Naruto, who had reacted, immediately shouted at the two people on the opposite side of the bridge, hand over the legacy of the fourth Hokage, or die. One of them said in a flat tone at this time, while taking off his bamboo hat, revealing a handsome and slightly pale face. This person, like Liang Yue and others, wore a Konoha ninja for a protector, but the whirlpool symbol in the middle of the iron plate was crossed out horizontally. This is the symbol of a missing nin. In addition, this person also had a pair of red pupils, and the three-tomo Sharingan unique to the Uchiha clan is that Itachi-san. Liang Yue looked at Itachi across the bridge and couldn't help but ask, Hyuga, Chunkyu, right? Sasuke has been in your care these years. Sasuke has been captured by Orochimaru, and we are going to find him and bring him back to Konoha now. That's none of my business, yo. So you're an old acquaintance? That makes things easier. Hey kid, and that white-haired guy, is that Jiraiya? Huh? Why does he look a bit different from the information in the report? Too young? Never mind, hand over that blonde brat, and we'll let the remaining two go. How about it? The person next to Itachi also took off his bamboo hat at this time, revealing a somewhat eerie face at first glance. This person looked like he was crossbred with a shark, with gray-blue skin, an upward sweeping broom head, and fish gill patterns painted on his cheeks. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Hoshigaki Kisame. Is that the Uchiha kid, Uchiha Itachi? I have specifically learned about your affairs before. Frankly speaking, your previous actions were a bit extreme. Jiraiya ignored Hoshigaki Kisame next to him at this time, but looked at Itachi across the bridge with some regret. As a member of the older generation in Konoha village, seeing the genius who once belonged to his own family, he couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Who knew that his action would directly anger this shark man? I saw the other party's small eyes squinted at this time, and he pulled out the giant sword wrapped in bandages from behind, and then slammed it forward. Today, none of you will be able to leave. Saying that, Hoshigaki Kisame began to quickly form hand seals, and then shouted at Liang Yue and the three of them on the other side of the river with a Chuny face water-style water dragon bullet technique. Then, I saw a spiral torrent composed of water columns suddenly rising on the river surface between the two sides. This water column was a meter thick with a whoosh. After circling in the air twice, it rushed towards the three of them with a surging momentum. The speed was very fast. However, just as it approached the shore, this water dragon bullet technique, which flowed like a python, was blocked by a big tree that suddenly grew from the ground. Boom! The turbulent water instantly washed over the fast-growing trees, but what was surprising was that the fierce impact of the water did not cause any ripples, but instead seemed to be irrigating and nourishing it. The big tree towered into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it grew to more than 20 meters. The green tree trunk and leaves fluttered in the wind, and looked particularly vibrant under the reflection of the water droplets. Needless to say, the person who took action was naturally Liang Yue. Chapter 341 Flame Wood. Wood release. Seeing the large tree that suddenly grew out, Itachi and Kisame Hoshigaki on the opposite bank of the river were immediately astonished, especially Itachi Uchiha, who also came from Konoha and had seen the darkness of the world, naturally understood what it meant for someone to possess the ability to use wood release. Either they had undergone modifications by root, with Hashirama cells implanted in their body, or they possessed the Senju bloodline, or they were born with a sage body. However, now that the battle had begun, Liang Yue naturally wouldn't waste any more words. He simply shook his body, and a burst of vigorous aura suddenly surged from within him. A small tree entangled with lightning and fire abruptly appearing behind him at the same time. The large tree in front of him also shook violently. Whoosh! A round leaf suddenly shot out. Some were like rapidly rotating grinding wheels, incredibly fast, while others had bizarre trajectories, spiraling in all directions. But in the blink of an eye, they had already enveloped the two opponents from all angles, covering the sky and earth. When Itachi and Kisame saw this situation, although they were somewhat doubtful about the power of these leaves, they didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. After all, this was wood release, so the two immediately leaped backward with the great tacit understanding, dodging the attack range of the flying leaves. However, the development of events did not go as they had expected, and the large number of leaves that attacked were not a one-time offensive. After changing direction in mid-air, they continued to spiral and shoot towards the two at high speed. Seeing this, Kisame Hoshigaki simply swung the large sword bound with bandages in his hand, creating a gray shadow in front of him. Swish, swish, swish. With a few strikes, the leaves in front of him were shattered to pieces. However, due to a slight oversight, several leaves still intersected with him, cutting out small, baby mouth-sized bloody openings on his body. Ha ha ha. Is this all the power of wood release? Careful, Just as Kisame Hoshigaki was about to land, thinking that Liang Yue was nothing more than this, he suddenly heard his teammate's reminder. Unfortunately, it was too late. Only a muffled bang sound was heard, and a thick tree root suddenly emerged from directly beneath Kisame, fluttering and dancing, like a dancing emerald green python. In the blink of an eye, it had firmly bound Kisame Hoshigaki's limbs, torso, waist, neck, etc., even fixing each of his 10 fingers separately, rendering him unable to move even half an inch. The Samehota in his hand also fell to the ground with a thud. The sharp ends of the roots, at this time, even directly transformed into wooden cones. Aiming at Kisame Hoshigaki's eyes, mouth, ears, and other vital positions, startling Kisame himself, who suddenly felt a burst of fear in his heart. Turning his gaze, and looking at Itachi Uchiha at this time, he had instantly completed a fire release Phoenix Sage fire technique. It seemed that he was planning to cooperate with Shuriken, and with the flames, to cut off the tree roots wrapped around Kisame Hoshigaki. Unfortunately, Liang Yue was indifferent to this. Then, this guy even directly turned his gaze, looking at a certain position on his side. Fire release Great Fireball technique. The Great Fireball technique is just the most common ninjutsu in fire release. With a level of around C rank, it's roughly the same as the Wave Country mission that Kakashi's Team 7 had received last time. The C rank level is only responsible for escorting, and incidentally dealing with ordinary thieves along the way. Once there are ninja intercepting the road, this mission will automatically be upgraded to B rank. If enemies of the elite Jonin level such as Zabuza Mamachi appear, the mission level will continue to rise. Therefore, the difficulty represented by C rank is the entry level. However, at this time, the Great Fireball technique used by Itachi-san is obviously not that simple. This so-called Great Fireball has really become a ball from the appearance. Its diameter is about 10 feet, the surface is smooth. All the flames of this ninjutsu are restrained, and have been collected into the interior of the fireball like a sun. It emits a terrifyingly hot temperature. For a time, the entire area was illuminated in a fiery red. Obviously, this originally most ordinary fire ninjutsu has been modified by Itachi. Although the hand seal method remains unchanged, the internal structure of the ninjutsu has been reorganized as expected. Compared to Itachi-san, Sasuke is just a little brother, facing the modified Great Fireball technique that was smashing towards him. Liang Yue was not flustered at this time, but just raised his arm towards the fireball. As the spiritual power within his body was released, his arm instantly transformed into a half-grown small tree. However, compared to the verdant large tree in front of him, this small tree transformed from his arm was fiery red all over, and the surface faintly shimmered with a hint of glazed color. Subsequently, a surprising thing happened. It was seen that after the small tree collided with Itachi's Great Fireball technique, it did not cause any ripples, and the two quickly merged together. To be precise, the large fireball was shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just 1 or 2 breaths, it was completely absorbed by the fiery red small tree in Liang Yue's hand. Under the sunlight, this small tree, after absorbing the Great Fireball technique, seemed to have been nourished, and it was even more crystal clear inside it. There was still a stream of honey-like water flowing. Itachi on the opposite side, and even Jiraiya and Naruto behind Liang Yue, obviously did not expect that wood could actually absorb flames, which was a completely illogical phenomenon in their understanding. For a time, they all fell into a daze. However, Itachi-san is now in a hostile relationship with the three after all, so only in the next moment after being in a trance, he regained his composure. And Liang Yue here, also once again manipulated the small tree in his hand, completing another round of transformation. In the blink of an eye, the original tree instantly transformed into a sword blade connected to his arm. This sword presented a sharp triangular pyramid shape, the surface showing a crystal fiery red, but the interior was a piece of blazing white, the scorching temperature directly baking the surrounding air and quickly distorting it. Immediately, Liang Yue gently flicked the sword blade in his hand. A white flame instantly sprayed out, and a mottled scorched gully appeared in the ground and dense forest behind him. The trees were directly carbonite, and a magma color appeared on the ground after releasing this flame energy. The sword blade on Liang Yue's arm returned to the appearance of an arm. Your wood release seems to be a bit different. Itachi frowned slightly at this time, looking at him with a hint of solemnity in his eyes. This is something I researched myself. It's not the wood release of the first Hokage, Liang Yue replied after smiling. Is that so? I didn't expect that the Hyuga family, who are good at taijutsu, would produce a genius in ninjutsu. Then, now let me show you the true strength of the Uchiha clan. Saying that, Itachi's eyes, which originally had a slightly melancholy color, suddenly widened. The three-tomo Sharingan quickly rotated a few times, and then turned into a pattern similar to a three-bladed shuriken Tsukuyomi. Chapter 342 Amaterasu Black Flame. Tsukuyomi. As Itachi's voice fell, Liang Yue suddenly felt surrounded by darkness in the blink of an eye. He found himself unknowingly bound to a cross. Standing around him were 8 or 9 Uchiha Itachi, each holding a knife, staring at him expressionlessly. Your chakra training is flawed, Itachi. Moreover, while the Mangekyou Sharingan is incredibly powerful, your chakra quality can't keep up, so each use consumes your life force. Using it too frequently will cause your eyesight to deteriorate. After being trapped in the illusion, Liang Yue didn't panic. He calmly looked at the Itachi in the distance and said, based on his personal experience and the information gleaned from the original storyline, this Tsukuyomi illusion should also be a means of affecting the subject's visual and auditory nerves, pain, and other sensory stimuli through specific chakra and mental energy frequency fluctuations. This is the same path taken by some ordinary, more profound illusions. However, compared to ordinary illusions, Tsukuyomi is activated through the Mangekyou Sharingan. The Sharingan itself originates from the bloodline power of the Otsutsuki clan. It can be said that the Sharingan is actually a converter inherited through bloodlines, and the techniques performed with it are naturally more advanced. Therefore, most people can only passively enter it and can hardly resist. But Liang Yue is different. He cultivates not chakra, but spiritual power of a higher quality. Moreover, his current cultivation progress has reached the innate realm, and his mental power has already formed the divine sense power of a cultivator. At the same time, Liang Yue also possesses a bloodline no weaker than the Uchiha clan. The Byakugan's specialty is detection and reconnaissance. With such an overwhelming advantage, how could Liang Yue possibly lose? It's like doing a simple comparison problem. Given that the Tensegan and Rinnegan are on the same level of existence, then, between the Byakugan powered by spiritual energy and the Mangekyou Sharingan, which is superior? Even an elementary school student can answer that. It seems you know quite a bit. You said my chakra training is flawed. What do you mean? After hearing Liang Yue's words, Itachi's face showed a clear surprise, but he still maintained a cool expression and asked, you've heard about Orochimaru causing trouble in Konoha before, right? He killed the 4th Kazekage, but when facing the 3rd Hokage, he was almost instantly defeated and fled, vomiting blood. That's not because the 3rd Hokage was still strong in his old age, but because he had already made a breakthrough on the original foundation. Otherwise, with the 3rd Hokage's current age of 69, he would probably have already met with disaster. Liang Yue replied calmly at this time, so, the method for the 3rd Hokage's breakthrough was developed by me. It's a method that can directly absorb natural energy to convert it into more powerful chakra. At the same time, natural energy will also strengthen the cultivator's body through backflow, making their life force more resilient and allowing them to live longer. Sage mode, not sage mode. The sage mode you speak of is actually something passed down from the 3 great toad sage lands. What I'm talking about is a cultivation method that is more suitable for us humans. However, the threshold for cultivating this method is relatively high. Why tell me all this? I don't want to see you die in vain, Itachi. Sasuke also needs you to save him. Then continue. Well, the cultivation method is Tsukuyomi illusion space. About an hour later, so that's how it is, using mental state to guide natural energy to connect with a human body, thereby achieving a reverse feedback and enhancement relative to the external world. Muttering to himself, Itachi slowly raised his head, then looked at Liang Yue with a calm expression, but his eyes seemed particularly bright. Yes, that's roughly the idea. Liang Yue nodded in response. At the same time, he secretly sighed in his heart. As expected of Itachi, his talent and comprehension were at least half a level above the 3rd Hokage. Thank you for your gift. I will keep this in mind. So next, let me repay some interest. First. Saying that, Liang Yue suddenly curved the corners of his mouth, and a flash of light suddenly appeared in his pair of light purple eyes. In an instant, cyan green spiritual light instantly rose up, as if it were substantial. It looked like cyan green flames were coming out of his eye sockets. Immediately afterward, the dark space that originally enveloped Liang Yue was directly bounced away, and the cross that bound him naturally disappeared without a trace. With the expansion of the Byakugan's 360-degree spherical vision, it was as if a transparent barrier was being propped open, directly dissolving Itachi's Tsukuyomi illusion space. Release my teammates. These were the last words Itachi left behind as the Tsukuyomi illusion space disappeared. The Tsukuyomi illusion space is a magical mental world. Although more than an hour had passed inside, in reality, only a short moment had passed. Therefore, the people outside didn't actually know about the conversation between Liang Yue and Itachi. When the world before his eyes returned to reality again, Liang Yue followed suit. With a thought, Kisame Hoshigaki, who was wrapped and confined by layers of tree roots on the other side of the river, was released. Amaterasu. At this moment, Itachi's cold voice rang out again. Crap! Liang Yue was stunned upon hearing this and looked up. He saw Itachi covering a bleeding eye, staring at himself with the other eye. Immediately afterward, accompanied by high temperatures that seemed to appear out of thin air, black flames began to rise on his body. Don't be afraid, watch me. At this time, Jiraiya, who had been hiding on the side watching the excitement, finally played a role. He quickly took out a blank scroll from his arms, and then opened it beside Liang Yue. The Amaterasu black flames were immediately sucked into the scroll fire sealing method, a type of sealing technique from the Uzumaki clan. Liang Yue naturally knew this sealing technique as well. However, Jiraiya seemed relatively active at this time, so he didn't bother to snatch it. In addition, although Liang Yue had learned this sealing technique, he didn't have any blank sealing scrolls on him. Sealing technique. Let's go. Upon seeing this, Itachi immediately narrowed his eyes. After using the two great jutsu, Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi, he was naturally very weak at this time, so he immediately leaped up and jumped to the other side of the river, taking the still somewhat frightened Kisame Hoshigaki with him. He disappeared into the roadside thicket in the blink of an eye. During the process of being possessed by the Amaterasu black flames, Liang Yue almost subconsciously surged his spiritual power out of his body. Therefore, during the process of Jiraiya using the sealing technique to collect Amaterasu, he didn't suffer any injuries either, or rather, throughout the entire battle before, Liang Yue had remained completely unscathed. Apart from consuming a lot of spiritual power, the opponent hadn't even managed to injure a piece of clothing on his body. Chapter 343 Princess Tsunade. Chunkyu, how did you become so amazing? More research, more thinking. I want to become as amazing as you too. Then let Master Jiraiya teach you. Master Jiraiya, well, Chunkyu's methods aren't suitable for you. You brat should start with the most basic exercises first. Oh. And so, the three of them walked along, chatting idly along the way. Finally, on the afternoon of the third day, they arrived at Tanzaku town, located near the border of the Land of Fire. This is a resting place for merchants from various countries. It's not large, but it has everything you need. In addition to gathering various delicacies and wines, it also has many hot spring baths and gambling centers, making it a veritable haven for spending money. But, based on that woman's relationship with Konoha, could it be that they want me to help bring her back to Konoha? Speaking of which, that old guy, the third Hokage, should be so shameless, right? After all, I just gave him a great favor. Actually, Liang Yue didn't want to become Tsunade's disciple at all, even though the granddaughter of the first Hokage possessed the summoning contract of Shikatsu Forest and indirectly controlled the sage art training method of the Slug Sage. It was still the same after all. Liang Yue didn't lack those things at all. Moreover, once he signed a summoning contract with the Slug Sage, it basically meant that he needed to become a medic. Only in this way could he maximize the effectiveness of the slug summon. Otherwise, based on the slug's per attack power, it wouldn't be useful in ordinary battles, but when it came to a real war, summoning it to his side would only serve to boost his morale. Haven't you noticed that the first Hokage hasn't summoned his summon since signing the summoning contract with Shikatsu Forest? The reason is probably because the styles of the two are a bit mismatched. Hashirama Senju belonged to the type of super ninja, powerful output, powerful crowd control, powerful healing. In addition, he learned the sage art of Shikatsu Forest, and any battle was basically a one-man show at this time. Summoning a slug would only increase consumption, and Liang Yue's style is actually very similar to that of the first Hokage. Powerful output, powerful crowd control, powerful healing. Moreover, although he doesn't know any medical ninjutsu, he relies on the powerful nourishing and conditioning properties of spiritual power, as well as the more vigorous vitality of wood-type spiritual power, in addition to the auxiliary of healing spells, group healing spells, and ancient fruit wine, HP potions, golden goat milk, golden wool, and other items from the legendary series. Pretending to be a medic is not a problem at all, but a problem is, Liang Yue really doesn't need the slug's healing ability. After finding a hotel to stay in Tanzaku town, it was already night. Without much effort, Liang Yue and Naruto, led by Jiraiya, found Tsunade, who was drunk, in a tavern. Or rather, it was just a coincidence. The three of them were just planning to go out for dinner soon. The two groups of acquaintances met and naturally joined together, adding wine and dishes to start a new banquet. This sister looks so young, and her figure is so good. Is she really Tsunade of the Sannin, who is with Jiraiya? After 3 rounds of wine and 5 flavors of dishes, While Jiraiya and Tsunade were competing in drinking, Naruto leaned close to Liang Yue's ear with a suspicious look on his face and whispered, "Jiraiya looks very young now, but his youth is because he has made breakthroughs in chakra, while Tsunade on the opposite side is because she is practicing a sealing technique," Liang Yue explained casually when he heard the words. However, although Tsunade on the opposite side was ostensibly competing with Jiraiya in drinking, she was secretly paying attention to Naruto, the little blondie who looked a bit like her deceased brother, Naruki Senju. By the way, she also overheard the two whispering, "Yo Hyuga brat, you've actually heard of the yin seal technique. It seems your exposure to ninjutsu is not small." Tsunade, with a flushed face and a wine glass in her hand, looked at Liang Yue playfully. "Actually, I have roughly learned more than half of the Uzumaki clan's sealing techniques. Since the yin seal technique requires a woman as a basic condition, I have only learned about it," Liang Yue replied calmly at this time. "Tch, what a boring brat." After hearing this, a look of surprise flashed across Tsunade's face, and then she curled her lips and muttered softly. Before turning her gaze to Jiraiya on the other side, she said with a drunken voice, "What are you doing here this time? Don't tell me this is just a coincidence." Jiraiya's expression also became serious, and then he sighed softly and said, "I'm here to ask you to go back and become the fifth Hokage." Cough. Cough cough cough. Naruto's eyes widened suddenly when he heard this, and he was about to speak, but he choked on the food that was stuffed in his mouth. However, the people at the table didn't have time to pay attention to him at this time. Tsunade on the opposite side frowned immediately and replied without thinking, "Not interested. The third Hokage is dying, and Konoha is currently in a period of transition, and urgently needs you, the princess of the Senju clan, to return and take charge." After hearing the other party's refusal, Jiraiya's expression didn't change at all, as if he had known that the other party would answer like this. "But how did I hear that the old man showed great power a while ago and seriously injured Orochimaru with just a few moves?" Tsunade frowned as she poured herself a glass of wine. "You also know that he is already an old man. Our teacher is 69 years old this year, and he has been struggling since the death of the fourth Hokage. In order to deal with Orochimaru before he suddenly burst out with powerful combat power, but that was just burning his own life. Now the old man is close to running out of fuel," Jiraiya replied calmly at this time. After speaking, a few traces of sadness appeared on his old face at the right time. When Naruto heard this, he was suddenly shocked, and then a layer of mist appeared in his eyes unconsciously. Obviously, the old man, who was always kind and caring for him in his impression, had a pivotal position in Naruto's heart now. Suddenly learning from Jiraiya that he was about to die, he naturally felt sad from the bottom of his heart. Seeing this, Liang Yue didn't say anything, but sighed softly. He secretly lowered his head, then quietly watched the old actor Jiraiya continue to act. Chapter 344, Gambling. "I won't go back. The previous Hokage have already sacrificed themselves for the village, and now it's almost the third Hokage's turn. That old geezer. Only an idiot would want to sit in the Hokage's seat." Tsunade then gulped down the wine in her cup and looked at Jiraiya opposite her with an indifferent expression. "Smack, don't you dare insult the past Hokage. They were all heroes who sacrificed themselves to protect the village." Naruto slammed his hand on the table and stood up, glaring angrily at Tsunade. He raised his fist, jumped onto the table, and was about to pounce on her to fight. Fortunately, Jiraiya was prepared and grabbed Naruto by the back of his collar, preventing him from making a big mistake. Seeing how arrogant this little blondie was, Tsunade also stood up, placed one leg on the table, and confronted Naruto head-on. "Who are you, kid?" "He's called Naruto Uzumaki," Jiraiya answered for him. "HMPH. Becoming Hokage is my dream. Don't you dare insult the Hokage." Naruto followed closely behind, shouting at Tsunade with a determined look on his face. "Kid, you've got a big mouth, but wanting to become Hokage isn't just about shouting slogans. Do you have the strength?" Tsunade was stunned by his words, a few ripples appearing in her eyes. Then, she burped and looked at Naruto in front of her with amusement. "You old hag. If you're not convinced, let's go outside and have a one-on-one fight, huh?" Hearing Naruto's words, Tsunade's eyes twitched, and she glared fiercely at the little blondie. "Fight, then. Let's go outside the shop now." Saying that, Tsunade, who was already a bit tipsy, left the table first, ignoring Shizune's dissuasion, and walked straight towards the door. Naruto, not wanting to be outdone, rolled up his sleeves while cursing and followed her out. Jiraiya, looking like he was enjoying the show, also followed. Liang Yue was the last to leave, but the pub owner grabbed him and made him pay their bill. As a shadow-level expert who had been famous for many years, Tsunade wouldn't really want to fight Naruto to the death after all. After all these years, She was already over 50 years old and had some sense of a master as far as Liang Yue was concerned. The reason why she agreed to this farcical duel was probably just to test Naruto's strength. Kid. Don't say I'm bullying the young with that. Tsunade held out one finger to Naruto. In this match with you, I'll only use this one finger. If you can make me move from this spot, I'll consider it your win. How about it, kid? Don't underestimate me. I think it's fine. Jiraiya stopped Naruto in time, gave him a look to calm down, and then turned to look at Tsunade and continued. However, a simple match doesn't seem very fun. How about we bet something? What do you say? If he loses, you'll leave all the money you have on you behind. Hearing this, Tsunade glared at Jiraiya fiercely. Easy, but if Naruto wins, you'll come back to Konoha with us and become the 5th Hokage, Jiraiya said with a smile on his face. Seeing the hesitation on Tsunade's face, he quickly added with a chuckle, You're not afraid to bet, are you? Bet, then. Under Jiraiya's goading, after agreeing to the bet, Tsunade immediately became serious. Then, with one hand on her hip and the other holding up one finger, she said to Naruto, Kid, come at me. Ha! Hearing this, Naruto roared and charged forward with his fist raised. Unfortunately, the duel wasn't about to have. A louder voice. Naruto, who had fallen more than 10 meters away on his butt, wasn't injured much under Tsunade's deliberate control. He jumped up instantly and continued to shout at her while rubbing his red forehead. Seeing this, Tsunade's lips curved into a smile. HMPH, then come at me, you wait. Saying that, Naruto suddenly stretched out his right hand, and a large amount of chakra instantly surged out of his body, gathering in the palm of his hand in less than half a second. A Rasengan the size of an apple took shape. Then, Naruto charged over again. Seeing this, Tsunade's expression changed immediately. Then, she raised her finger high and dropped it heavily. Crack! A muffled sound. A ditch was immediately split in the ground in front of her. Naruto couldn't react in time and fell to the ground face first, the Rasengan in his hand smashing directly into the side of the road. Boom! A circular pit of about 3 meters immediately appeared. You actually learned the 4th Hokage's Rasengan. Not bad, but it's still no match for this finger of mine. Looking at the hole made by the Rasengan, Tsunade was surprised. However, this big sister still had a smug look on her face. HMPH. Don't be so smug. I still have an even more powerful move here. After getting up, Naruto immediately retreated more than 10 steps, stretched out his right hand again, and a large amount of chakra surged out of his body again. Still have a more powerful move? Did you teach him? Hearing this, Tsunade was stunned and looked at Jiraiya next to her with a gloomy expression. No, don't misunderstand. He had already learned that ninjutsu before I taught Naruto the Rasengan. Saying that, Jiraiya looked at the little blondie and continued, Hey Naruto, control it a little. This is a residential area. Be careful not to damage people's houses. Don't worry, Master Jiraiya. In these days, I can barely control the direction of the spirit arrow technique that I shoot out. Saying that, an egg-sized shuttle-shaped arrow had already appeared in his palm along with the high-speed rotating chakra. Intense wind pressure began to form around Naruto's body. Granny Tsunade, don't blame me for not reminding you. I'll hit the ground under your feet in a while, and if you jump up, it'll be counted as your loss. HMPH. Then try it. Looking at the arrow in Naruto's palm, Tsunade's face was solemn. She pursed her lips, squatted down slightly, and her face was no longer as relaxed as before. You get ready. I'm going to shoot. Stop talking nonsense. I'm really going to shoot. Are you coming or not? Hey! With Naruto's loud shout, the large spirit arrow technique in his hand was immediately shot diagonally into the sky. Swish! Along with a sharp sound of breaking through the air, the high-speed rotating spirit arrow technique instantly soared into the sky hundreds of meters away with a long spiral tail flame. Still, a little unable to do it, Naruto touched the back of his head at this moment. Looking tangled and unhappy, the opposite Tsunade turned her head in surprise, looking at the arrow that was flying away like a shooting star, her eyes a little dull. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345: The Sudden Appearance of Orochimaru. As the morning light barely broke through the haze, 2 women wearing straw hats hurried out of a hotel in Tanabata town. They kept their heads down, carrying suitcases, looking like thieves, focused only on moving forward. One of them was also holding a small piglet, still sound asleep. These were none other than Tsunade and her secretary apprentice, Shizune. Tsunade-sama, why don't we just return to Konoha? I think that would be the best choice for us. I'm not going back. If I return to the village, those people will make me the Hokage. It's too much trouble, but, according to last night's agreement, don't worry. I've already drugged Jiraiya. He won't wake up until this afternoon at the earliest. As for the other two brats, they're nothing to fear but, we only have about 1 million left in assets. What? That's all that's left? Don't worry, it's just money. With my gambling skills, I guarantee we can make a fortune in one go. Regarding the gambling match, Naruto, at the last moment last night, was afraid of hurting Tsunade, so he deliberately aimed the spirit arrow technique off target, sending it into the sky, but Tsunade, shocked, turned around to check and unconsciously left her original position. So, after Jiraiya's flurry of interjections, the old lady Tsunade generously admitted defeat and declared on the spot that she would abide by the agreement and return to Konoha with the three to take over as Hokage. Jiraiya, of course, was in a great mood and, in his excitement, invited Tsunade and the others to have a celebratory drink. Unexpectedly, he was drugged in the process. Fortunately, Liang Yue and Naruto were children and not old enough to drink, so hey. Granny Tsunade, where are you going? Stop right there. Just as Tsunade and Shizune arrived at the mouth of an alley on the edge of Tanabata town, about to leave, Naruto suddenly appeared at one end of the alley, shouting at them. Hearing this, Tsunade immediately tensed up and quickly pulled Shizune behind her, speeding towards the outside of the district. Seeing this, Naruto also hurriedly started running with his short legs, chasing after them while shouting loudly, "Stop right there! You old hag! Do you intend to go back on your word, as the next Hokage? You have to own up when you lose a bet. How can you do such a thing? Say what you mean. Move forward bravely. The well of fire cannot be desecrated." Thus, amidst Naruto's shouts and curses, the three of them, two in front and one behind, quickly arrived at an open field on the outskirts of the district. Liang Yue was currently standing on top of a rock, arms crossed, blocking the path of the three. There was no choice. Who told him to be used to cultivating all night without sleeping? Moreover, in a state of cultivation, his senses became exceptionally sharp, and Tsunade and the others were living right next door to him. Damn it, I can't believe it. I've been blocked here by you two brats. Looking at Liang Yue in front of her, and Naruto, who was chasing from behind, Tsunade's eyes widened, her face hardened, and she put on a fierce look before raising her fist. "Kid, I advise you two to get out of the way, or you'll be in for a world of hurt. Don't try to scare people. HMPH. Huff, you faithless old woman. You go back on your own promises. I, Uzumaki Naruto, would rather be beaten to death than let you pass." Naruto, panting, arrived in front of them, pointing at Tsunade's nose and scolding. When Tsunade heard this little blondie dared to call her an old woman, her eyes twitched, and she instantly flashed next to Naruto, punching him on the forehead. "You brat, ouch!" Naruto cried out miserably, immediately clutching his head and squatting on the ground, looking pained. "What about you? Hyuga brat? Are you planning to stop me too?" Then Tsunade turned her gaze to Liang Yue again, threatening. "Tsunade-sama, please come back with us. Konoha needs you now." As Liang Yue spoke, he suddenly frowned slightly, his gaze unconsciously turning towards the seemingly empty grassland next to him. "Yo, just two little guys, and you dare to lecture me? It seems I have to teach you a lesson today, or you won't know how powerful I, Tsunade, am." As Tsunade said this, she was about to roll up her sleeves and take action when Shizune next to her quickly grabbed her arm. Hell. Just then, a sinister laugh suddenly came from the side door. "Orochimaru, why are you here? Is there something you want from me?" Seeing the familiar face next to her, Tsunade subconsciously took a few steps forward, subtly shielding Naruto and Shizune behind her. Then, the old lady inconspicuously glanced at Liang Yue. It seemed she intended to have him hide as well. "I didn't come to find you this time, Tsunade." As he said this, Orochimaru and Kabuto turned their gaze towards Liang Yue, their faces full of admiration and desire. Hyuga Shunjutsu, the super genius who suddenly rose to prominence in Konoha in recent years. "I didn't expect the third Hokage to be willing to let you leave the village. That's too careless. You came for me." Looking at the two people staring at him with wide eyes, Liang Yue's lips curved into a strange smile. Speaking of which, when Orochimaru carried out the Konoha Crush plan, he was already a little regretful. Not only was he unable to keep such a ringleader behind, but even Glasses Kun Kabuto had slipped away at some point. He originally thought that, because of the change in the plot, he probably wouldn't encounter the two of them for a long time. Unexpectedly, they came to his door today, of course. Apart from you, no one in the entire ninja world has this qualification. The reason why the third Hokage was able to recover to his peak condition last time was because of you, Shunjutsu-kun. different from the three great summoning lands, a senjutsu training method suitable for humans. I never thought that it would be created by a young man your age. As Orochimaru spoke, a fanatical look appeared on his face. Hearing this, Tsunade and the others were immediately taken aback, and they couldn't help but turn their heads to look at Liang Yue. This news actually leaked. Could it be Danzo told you? After hearing the other party's words, Liang Yue was also a little surprised, but thinking about it carefully, it made sense under the veiled hints of Danzo, Kahoru Utatane, and Hamura Mitagato. Although the third Hokage wouldn't necessarily teach them the exact method of breakthrough, he would inevitably reveal some minor details, and Danzo and Orochimaru originally had some shady connections. Once the third Hokage was adamant about not revealing the method of breaking through to the innate realm, these two would inevitably collude secretly again. Chapter 346 Pocket, Pawn. It seems you know quite a bit. How about it? Willing to come with me, Lord Chunkyu? After hearing Liang Yue's words, Orochimaru was visibly stunned, but then he said nonchalantly after speaking, he even stuck out his long tongue and licked the corner of his mouth in a disgusting manner. Seeing this, Liang Yue subconsciously frowned. I really can't stand you. You want me to go with you, but it seems there's nothing on your side that can attract me, right? Ninjutsu development, methods to become stronger, or your body replacement technique that requires rotation every 3 years? To me, none of this is attractive. Hell, the things I research are indeed a bit lacking compared to Lord Chunkyu's sage arts. Powerful sage chakra. Using natural energy to infuse and strengthen the body, it greatly improves the body's strength and lifespan. Judging from the third Hokage's condition, once you master Lord Chunkyu's sage arts, the body will at least return to the prime of 20 or 30 years old. But has Lord Chunkyu ever considered that, in this situation, if we could add my previous ideas and use them in conjunction with the body replacement technique, wouldn't we be able to perfectly achieve immortality? As he spoke, a strong fiery color reappeared in Orochimaru's eyes, and down next to him was the same. I think you've got it wrong. Our two lines of thinking are completely opposite. I'm walking the most orthodox path of cultivation, while your method of extending life through body replacement is only suitable for those who are clinging to life. Hearing this, Liang Yue jumped lightly to the ground and looked at the other party expressionlessly. So, Lord Chunkyu doesn't agree with my proposal? Then I'm sorry, but you might have to suffer a bit later. Hearing this, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes, but his tone was still quite gentle. HMPH. With me here today. Don't even think about taking anyone away. Tsunade at this time took a few steps forward again with a solemn expression, and then turned her head to Jingai next to her. When the battle starts, find a chance to take those two kids away, and then go get Jiraiya over here for me. After speaking, this old aunt suddenly gritted her teeth, and a burst of vigorous aura emanated from her whole body. For a time, chakra overflowed, the air was unusually heavy, and the ground under her feet was shaken to pieces. Seeing this, Orochimaru's face immediately became expressionless. It seems, Tsunade, you don't intend to let me take people away? Very well, it's been many years, now let me learn how much skill you, my old classmate, have left. As he spoke, Orochimaru turned his gaze to down next to him. Now, leave Lord Chunkyu to you, remember, try not to hurt him. No problem. Hearing this, Glasses Bro Dao also licked his tongue unconsciously, and then looked at Liang Yue with a smiling face. You little brat, hurry up and leave. What are you doing coming over here? Looking at Liang Yue, who was walking forward unhurriedly from beside her, Tsunade was startled and shouted with an annoyed expression, Aunt Tsunade, you don't seem to understand me. Actually, my combat power is not weak. Hearing this, Liang Yue smiled slightly at this old aunt, and then continued to walk towards Dao on the opposite side on his own. Oh, I heard that Lord Chunkyu has completed A-level missions before, and the opponent was even Taoji's Abuzan, one of the elite Jonin of Kirigakure village, and one of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Moreover, it is said that Lord Chunkyu performed very well in this mission. It's a pity that I haven't seen the scroll recording the mission process. I'm also very curious about how Lord Chunkyu's actual combat ability is. Seeing this, Dao on the opposite side smiled even more. Shadow clone plus earth style? You're using this trick in the wrong place. Looking at Dao on the opposite side, who had already come more than 10 meters away from him, and then pretended to take out 2 shurikens from his arms, ready to throw them, Liang Yue twitched a corner of his mouth. Spiritual power surged in his body, and with a light stomp of his foot, a thick and sharp tree root emerged from the ground, instantly piercing Dao's body. PFFT. After a soft sound, this Dao suddenly turned into a puff of white smoke and disappeared. This is a shadow clone rumble. At the same time, the ground in front of Liang Yue was suddenly shaking violently. Immediately afterwards, Piles of soil were arched open from the ground. Another tree root emerged from the ground, and the sharp roots were also stringing it out. The only slight difference is that this Dao's brain has already been pierced by the tree root. Don't play Earth style in front of me. It's not a good idea looking at the corpse of this glasses bro. Liang Yue subconsciously summoned the mission interface, looked at it above, and then felt relieved. So, Dao, one of the war culprits in the Naruto world, died wood style. I didn't expect Lord Shunkyu to know this too. Orochimaru at this time glanced regretfully at Dao, who had been thrown aside, and then looked at Liang Yue with a face full of surprise. Tsunade and Jingain on this side were no better, also with shocked expressions. Only Naruto's reaction was fairly normal. After all, this little yellow-haired brat had already seen it before. This is the difference between us. Your research has entered a dead end, while my cultivation has only just begun. As he spoke, Liang Yue's spiritual power surged, and the ground in front of him suddenly rumbled again. In just 1 or 2 breaths, a lush green tree of 20 meters had rapidly formed. Liang Yue then jumped lightly, and the whole person stood on the tree trunk. Shua along with a flying gray shadow. A large number of green leaves shot out from this tree in an overwhelming manner towards Orochimaru on the opposite side, and Snake Uncle at this time had also lost his previous season smile, and became serious facing the flying leaves. He didn't dare to be negligent, and with a light leap backwards, he directly flew out 20 or 30 meters away. Obviously, with Liang Yue's wood style, plus Tsunade's support on the side, he felt that he no longer had the advantage. However, it was somewhat unrealistic for him to retreat now. After all, Liang Yue at this time was an exceptionally delicious sweet potato in Orochimaru's eyes. Delicious and juicy, large in quantity and size. His dream of immortality for many years was in Liang Yue's hands. It was just a coincidence that he happened to encounter Konoha's negligence, allowing Liang Yue to leave the ninja village. This was really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but after experiencing this kidnapping incident, such opportunities may not be many, and Orochimaru would have to wait until the year of the monkey. And it would definitely not be as simple as it is now. Therefore, this time he needs to go all out. It really is a bit tricky. It seems that Lord Shunkyu will not submit without taking out some real skills. As he spoke, Orochimaru suddenly bit his finger, pinched a hand seal, and then pressed it directly on the ground. Bang! A puff of white smoke flashed, and a huge purple snake, coiled together at least 50 or 60 meters high, suddenly appeared there. Orochimaru at this time was standing on the snake's head, overlooking the 4 people on this side. Chapter 347 The Miserable Snake. Kid, get back. Seeing Orochimaru's actions, Tsunade didn't want to be outdone. In an instant, a struggling look flashed across the woman's face, then she narrowed her eyes and resolutely bit her finger. After a few hand seals, she slammed her hand on the ground. Bang! Along with this sudden white smoke, a huge slug appeared beneath her. Judging from its size alone, this slug was not inferior to the purple snake opposite, but Liang Yue, who was familiar with the Naruto plot, knew that these two were at most good at different things. The slug's strength lies in healing, and it may not be able to fight Manda head-on. However, seeing Tsunade summon her psychic beast again after many years, Shizune seemed extremely happy due to her hemophobia. Tsunade had almost immediately fallen into a state of helplessness and trembling when facing blood. All these years even her own blood made her unable to face it. Unexpectedly, Tsunade was now able to overcome this obstacle at a critical moment, bite her finger, and summon the slug that she hadn't seen for many years. This was definitely good news for her long time no see. Little Tsunade. As soon as it appeared, the huge slug beneath her greeted Tsunade, its voice gentle and sweet, forming a huge contrast with its slug-like image. Long time no see. Huffed. Tsunade took a deep breath at this time, and then looked at Orochimaru opposite with a serious face. While she was thinking about how to fight the enemy later, she glanced out of the corner of her eye and found that Liang Yue was still standing on the tree she had created. Hey! Hyuga kid! Why are you still here? Didn't I tell you to? Damn it! At the moment when Tsunade was distracted, Orochimaru immediately launched an attack, and the distance of nearly 100 meters between the two sides was crossed almost in the blink of an eye. At this time, Snake Dude was not going to attack Tsunade and the slug next to him. After ordering Manda to bend down, he opened his giant mouth and devoured the tree where Liang Yue was. As a former comrade and classmate for many years, he naturally knew how much the slug next to him was capable of. Although they both came from the 3 major psychic beast holy lands, and their size was almost the same as Manda under him, the slug was far behind in terms of aggressiveness and speed except for the move of spraying acid. The biggest role of the slug lineage in Wetbone Forest is actually large-scale assistance. Furthermore, his purpose for coming here this time was not to fight Tsunade. As long as he could take down Liang Yue as quickly as possible, he would not hesitate to retreat immediately. However, What happened next was completely beyond Orochimaru's expectations. Seeing Liang Yue, who was almost close at hand below, Orochimaru's heart was extremely excited at this time. His plan for immortality, which he had been seeking for many years, had also made unexpected progress due to the other party's sudden rise. And the hope of success was right in front of him. Snake Dude had never felt that he was so close to the top. Crack 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 crack. The purple giant snake was caught off guard and slammed its head into the ground. Orochimaru, who was originally standing on its head, was directly thrown away by this sudden force. However, Manda was after all the top thug from Raichi Cave, so naturally he would not die so easily. Although the giant claw left a deep claw mark on its head, breaking its scales and tearing its skin, it did not directly complete the kill. On the contrary, at this time, Manda seemed to be aroused by ferocity, and quickly got up from the ground with its instinctive reaction. He roared angrily at the giant claw in front of him, and his snake eyes were filled with out-of-control killing intent. However, just as the purple giant snake opened its mouth, and was about to bite over with its mouth full of fangs, another giant claw appeared. Bang! There was a loud noise. It suddenly emerged from the ground on the other side, and hit Manda's head hard, causing it to smash into the ground again. A blood-red palm print was immediately branded on the giant snake's head, one left and one right, very evenly. Looking at Liang Yue again, the big tree under him had now undergone tremendous changes as two big claws emerged from the ground one after another. The tree also began to expand and deform continuously, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a majestic head: lion head, tiger eyes, deer antlers, long mane. Then, the giant claws suddenly propped up on the ground. Rumble rumble, accompanied by a burst of earth and rock collapsing. The huge body, spine, hind legs, and long tail behind him also emerged from the ground one after another. When the dust gradually settled and the airflow stabilized, everyone realized that what appeared on the earth at this time was actually a Kilin, a giant Kilin that was activated and constructed by wood release ninjutsu. Its inspiration came from Hashirama Senju's wood dragon technique, but compared to the dragon, Liang Yue knew the image of the Kilin better. After all, he himself had a skill to summon divine beasts, and he had spent a lot of time studying it at this moment. Although this Kilin came from wood release, under the blessing of Liang Yue's thunder, fire, and wood spiritual power, its whole body showed a golden color. Its height was slightly larger than the slug next to it, but its length was nearly 200 meters, and its image was full and majestic. The muscles on the surface of the limbs were round and strong, lifelike. Liang Yue was standing on the head of this Kilin, overlooking the bottom from a high position. After being hit by two heavy hammers, he had slowly calmed down, and at this moment, he was slowly getting up and retreating with a look of coldness. Manda huff. However, Liang Yue did not intend to let this purple giant snake retreat calmly with a thought. The wood release Kilin under him immediately turned into golden storm and pounced on it. When Manda on the opposite side saw this, a fierce light flashed in his eyes, and he was equally unambiguous. He opened his snake mouth and shot towards the Kilin's neck. However, Liang Yue, who possessed Byakugan, had already detected the timing of the opponent's muscle attack facing the incoming giant kiss. The Kilin under him did not dodge or avoid it, and slammed into Manda's head. On Duong, whether the snake's head or the wood is harder is obviously not the point. The point is, after this collision, Manda once again slammed into the ground with a dizzy head. In a supine position, the snake's mouth was directly flattened. Then, Liang Yue controlled one of the Kilin's giant claws and grabbed its tail with a force. Manda was immediately thrown from his front to the back, and then swung round in the air from the back, and smashed towards the ground in front. Boom! For a time, smoke and dust were everywhere, and the strong wind was rolling under the swing. Even the earth was shaking, and a trench suddenly appeared on the ground. Chapter 348: The Eight-Headed Technique. Watching one snake, who was already under his claws, lying straight and unresponsive, Liang Yue didn't plan to let it go. He continued to pull it back. Boom! Boom! He swung it twice in a row, smashing it hard in the direction where Orochimaru had fallen before. It's a pity that compared to the idiot snake in his hands, Orochimaru was much more cunning. Its effect is exceptionally heaven-defying, so much so that in the later stages, ninjas didn't dare to use this technique much during battles. Otherwise, imagine the scene: Naruto and Sasuke, after a hard struggle, finally reached the final level, only to face the final boss, Kaguya Otsutsuki. After exhausting all their efforts, they had just managed to stun her a little, and just as the two of them, one on the left and one on the right, were about to use a move, Six Paths Heaven-severing hand, but just as they were about to touch Kaguya's body, she used the most basic body replacement technique to transfer away. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? Therefore, Liang Yue always kept in mind the saying that the most basic is the most advanced. Back when he was studying at the ninja school, he had always valued the body replacement technique among the 3 body techniques. According to Liang Yue's comprehensive understanding of the Naruto plot, this body replacement technique should at least be a space-time ninjutsu with heaven-defying effects. Let's get back to the topic. Even though Orochimaru had already witnessed Liang Yue's unexpected, or rather, shocking strength, he still decided to take another chance for the sake of immortality. 8 branches technique, accompanied by a gloomy low shout. A burst of intense chakra suddenly surged from behind a large rock on Liang Yue's right side. In an instant, a white mass spewed out, rising nearly 100 meters into the sky like a giant tornado, surging and spinning, stirring up a tidal wave of wind. Then, the grayish-white mass suddenly split like a peacock spreading its tail, forming 8 thick and ferocious giant snakes, just like the legendary Yamada no Orochi. 8 snake heads grew side by side, their surfaces covered with upturned scales, and their bodies were grayish-white except for their black eye sockets. The 8 giant snake heads raised their heads to the sky, uttering bursts of hissing sounds, their snake necks dancing wildly, connected to one body, but with 8 firm snake tails scattered behind them. Then, the 8 snake heads turned together, and 16 cold eyes suddenly looked towards Liang Yue. This is a bit interesting. Looking at Orochimaru's 8 branches technique on the opposite side, Liang Yue's mouth suddenly curved, and a bit of excitement arose in his eyes. Without any hesitation, under his mind control, the golden key rin under him immediately pounced forward facing the 8 moving giant snakes. Liang Yue seemed to have no interest in using any fancy methods at this time, just like when he faced one snake before, he just charged straight up. Be careful. Tsunade behind him was shocked and reminded him. However, what happened next made this old ant shut her mouth in shock again, facing the 8-headed Yamada no Orochi moving together and roaring endlessly. The Kirin under Liang Yue remained unmoved from beginning to end, rushing up like a moth to a flame in the blink of an eye. The distance of several hundred meters disappeared quickly. Then, 2 giant snake heads attacked instantly, one on the left and one on the right. Opening their mouths to bite the golden Kirin's shoulders, huge teeth were deeply embedded inside the Kirin. What was surprising, however, was that Liang Yue, who was controlling the Kirin, turned a blind eye to this and continued to rush forward with the trampling of its 4 hooves. The 2 snake heads on its body did not cause any hindrance to the Kirin's actions. Instead, they were dragged along, continuing towards the Yamada no Orochi's main body. Orochimaru climbed out of the giant mouth of one of the snake heads in the middle, his body covered in mucus, and the look in his eyes towards the Kirin and Liang Yue below was tinged with suspicion. Swish swish swish. Immediately afterwards, 3 more snake heads attacked instantly, with fierce momentum, locking onto the Kirin again like lightning. PFFT. At the same time, accompanied by a muffled impact sound, the Kirin's head where Liang Yue was located finally collided with the 8 snake heads of the giant serpent. 2 firm antlers instantly plunged into the snake's abdomen. Then, arching upwards with forced bloom, Liang Yue stretched out his arms at this time, his eyes sparkling with brilliance. Crack crack swish. In an instant, the originally mighty golden Kirin under him suddenly underwent a shape change like a golden ear mushroom that was rapidly soaking. Its body swelled rapidly at the same time. Sharp wooden spears shot out from the Kirin's body to all directions, with a bluish-green spiritual power attached to them. In the blink of an eye, they had already pierced into the Yamada no Orochi's thick scales. The Kirin's main body simply turned into a plant that was vigorously sprouting. Thousands of branches swayed, stretching out arbitrarily, and instantly bound of 5 giant snake heads embedded in its body firmly together. Then, it contracted, penetrated, and then used the Yamada no Orochi's body as nourishment, constantly sprouting new trunks and branches, while the serpent's main body constantly withered and dried up. This whole process happened very quickly. In just less than 2 seconds, the entire body of the Yamada no Orochi was covered by a verdant tree and branches. In the blink of an eye, it completely turned into a magnificent plant with a very peculiar shape. Swish. At this moment, a figure suddenly flashed in front of Liang Yue, and Orochimaru appeared there at this time. Orochimaru was a little breathless, and his snake eyes were full of shock. It's really shocking, Chunky-ukun. I didn't expect that you, who are still in your teenage years, could develop such a powerful ninjutsu. This is not ninjutsu, it's just a variant application of a technique I came up with after reading the first Hokage's Wood release. If you have to consider it a ninjutsu, you can think of this thing as a variant version of Wood Dragon technique plus advent of a world of flowering trees. Looking at Orochimaru in front of him, Liang Yue didn't hesitate to explain some extra things to him. Moreover, from the perspective of the system task, in fact, compared to Yakushi Kabuto, Orochimaru was even more difficult to judge in the original plot. Although the other party had always been fascinated by the research on the art of immortality, apart from the half-abandoned Konoha crush plan, he had not done anything else to help the wicked do evil at most. He could be regarded as a pyramid scheme boss and a scientific madman. And it was really a bit far-fetched to call him a war criminal. Although he improved the impure world reincarnation, this forbidden ninjutsu, it was Yakashi Kabuto who really used it in the war. Compared to ninjutsu, I actually value the application of chakra more. From your point of view, the so-called sage art is just an advanced version of chakra. Is that so? I never thought before that simply relying on chakra could make people immortal. Now it seems that my research direction should indeed change. As he said that, Orochimaru suddenly looked back and saw Tsunade leading Shizune and Naruto quickly approaching from a distance. Further away, he even discovered Jiraiya's figure, so Orochimaru knew that his time was running out. After all, the execution of the 8 branches technique was not simple, requiring a huge amount of chakra and mental energy. With his current situation, it was impossible to win if he faced Tsunade and Jiraiya again. Not being captured alive would be considered burning incense. I wonder, Chunky-kun, how would you be willing to teach me the method of sage art training? I can pay any price. Looking at Orochimaru opposite him, whose face was faintly showing a hint of pleading and expectation, Liang Yue pondered for a while before replying, come back to Konoha, find a decent way yourself. Chapter 349 Return to Konoha. What did Orochimaru say to you? On the way back to Tanabata Street, Jiraiya, who was late, asked curiously from the side. Orochimaru said he wanted the method of immortal arts training, and said he would pay any price for it. Liang Yue replied with a look of indifference. Then what did you say? Tsunade frowned upon hearing this. I asked him to return to Konoha, and then you guys came. Liang Yue smiled and said, well, this condition is actually. Jiraiya next to him heard this, his eyes lit up, and he subconsciously touched his chin, obviously feeling that Liang Yue's approach was quite reliable. After all, he had also put in a lot of effort to bring back his old classmate, and in his heart, he still had a glimmer of hope that the other party would return to Konoha. Now Liang Yue's approach provided him with a good idea. If persuasion doesn't work, then lure him with benefits. Tsunade, who was on the side, seemed a little silent after hearing this, and continued to ask after a moment, what are the benefits of cultivating your kind of immortal arts? The effect is great. First of all, your chakra will evolve from being synthesized only from within the body to being synthesized with natural energy, no longer consuming your own body's energy. I have a deep understanding of this. You know, before this, I knew the immortal arts training method of Mount Myaboku, but that thing is no match for the immortal arts invented by Chunkyu. After hearing Tsunade's words, before Liang Yue could speak, Jiraiya on the side seemed very active, and after a burst of boasting, he inadvertently revealed his old secrets. In addition, you will also get a chance to be infused and strengthened by natural energy, roughly similar to using the immortal arts of the 3 great sage lands, but that strengthening is permanent. That powerful natural energy will expel waste from the body, and may even make you rejuvenate. Look at me, don't I look a lot younger now? Let me tell you, this is the result I just achieved before coming to Tanabata Street. As he spoke, Jiraiya pointed to his old face and showed Tsunade his smooth skin. So, you have also cultivated his kind of immortal arts. Tsunade looked him up and down carefully at this time, and said with a hint of playfulness in her tone, yes. But don't think that anyone can learn the thing. It requires opportunity, mental state, and necessary guidance. That guy, you don't know the scene at that time. At the moment I broke through, I suddenly felt transparent, as if I was connected to nature, and the surrounding energy kept pouring into my body, but that process was very suitable, and there was no risk. In just one night, I had a qualitative improvement, and I originally felt my body should start to decline in another 2 or 3 years, but after this, that time should be pushed back at least 30 or 40 years. He awesome, right? Jiraiya's eyes were narrowed into 2 slits at this time, like a white-haired fox who had stolen grapes. Liang Yue, who was next to him, couldn't help shaking his head, secretly saying that this old guy was really asking for it. So, as long as you successfully cultivate Chunkyu's immortal arts, a person's physical condition will return to its peak, and life expectancy will also be extended. Tsunade lowered her head at this time and touched her fist. Yes. How about it? Awesome, right? I'm awesome. Your head, ouchis. Why are you hitting me, you guy? You told me before that the 3rd Hokage was dying. Now he can extend his life again. Hey. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let me sort it out first. What did I say before? That what? Chunkyu, what did you say at that time? I didn't say anything at the time. As soon as Liang Yue's words fell, Tsunade's old fist was delivered to Jiraiya's face again, followed by a brutal beating. Shizune and Naruto were trembling beside them. Liang Yue was able to understand this. After all, a woman in her 50s is indeed at menopause. In the next few days, under Jiraiya's deathly pale apologies and entanglement, and under the encirclement and interception of Naruto, the little blondie, using the gambling agreement as an excuse. What? You want me to be this kid's teacher? Tsunade said with a face full of amusement and surprise, looking at the third Hokage behind the desk. At this time, Sarutobi Hiruzen had removed his previous disguise and completely returned to his prime, with a lean figure, wearing the Hokage hat, and the original old age spots and wrinkles on his face had long disappeared. However, the confidence of being wise and strong in old age on his face has not diminished at all. That's right, Chunkyu here, although he is a genius, he is still young and lacks experience, and needs to be guided. Tisk, didn't Jiraiya tell you about this before? The third Hokage looked at Jiraiya beside him with some strangeness. I didn't have time to say it, the situation was a bit complicated at the time. I only came to tell Tsunade about returning to take over as Hokage. Jiraiya replied with a smile. A whole week had passed, but there was still a faint blue bruise on this guy's eye sockets. He also said that you were about to die, saying that you had exhausted your vitality in the previous battle with Orochimaru and were lying in bed unable to move. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya with a look of disgust at this time, and then looked at the third Hokage opposite. Oh? Ho, isn't that to persuade you to come back? Now it's good, Tsunade, now that you're back, I can also unload the burden on my body and live a few years of stable life. The third Hokage took a puff of his smoking pipe and said with a smile, I heard that after cultivating immortal arts, you can live for many more years. Why not retire a few years later? Tsunade was silent for a while, then looked at the third Hokage. That won't work. I've been in the position of Hokage for too long. It's time for newcomers to take the stage, and besides, if it wasn't for the fourth Hokage sacrificing to protect existence more than 10 years ago, I would have retired many years ago, and now although I can accidentally live for a while longer, my heart is already tired. Saying that, the third Hokage put the Hokage hat on his head on the table, and then said with a serious face, let's decide that way, choose a day, and Tsunade, you will take over and officially become the fifth Hokage. With us old guys dragging behind you, you can rest assured and boldly do it. Give me some more time. Tsunade frowned and replied at this time, and then looked at Liang Yue, who had been sitting there quietly, and turned to him. What do you want to learn from me? I estimate that I can't teach you ninjutsu. Being able to draw with Orochimaru is completely enough to graduate. The summoning technique of Shikatsu Forest. Liang Yue heard the words, thought for a while, and replied, don't you already have your own immortal arts? Do you still want to learn slugs? I heard that the natural energy over there in the three great sage lands is more abundant. Chapter 350 Earth Dragon Cave. In the current Naruto world, the three great sacred grounds hold a rather special position. Just like the Hidden Leaf Village, their status in the ninja world is one of transcendence and oversight. What's even more speechless and infuriating to other ninja villages is that since the beginning of the ninja world, these three great sacred grounds seem to have been firmly tied to the Hidden Leaf Village. Mount Myaboku, Shikatsu Forest, Raichi Cave. Every so often, one or two ninja world contractors would emerge, and all of them would come from the Hidden Leaf Village. Among them, the Toads of Mount Myaboku are the most active, practically treating the Hidden Leaf Village as their second home as they accompany Naruto's growth. Even Shima Senin often runs to the Hidden Leaf Village's market to buy groceries. Secondly, Shikatsu Forest also frequently shows its face due to the three generations of contractors, Hashirama, Tsunade, and Sakura. As for Raichi Cave, it is the most mysterious of the three. However, when it comes to combat power, Raichi Cave, the sacred ground inhabited by a massive number of snakes, is probably the strongest. By the Boruto era, the foundation of Raichi Cave had begun to be revealed, with some snakes who had mastered the senjutsu of this sacred ground even evolving into human form. Of course, this matter originally didn't have much to do with Liang Yue. After all, he couldn't possibly run to Orochimaru's territory and have him press his paw print on Raichi Cave's contract scroll. However, one thing did manage to connect Liang Yue to Raichi Cave, and that was the three great sacred grounds seemed to be interconnected. Although each sacred ground covers a vast area, they seem to exist within the same mysterious space. After obtaining the Shikatsu Forest contract scroll from Tsunade, Liang Yue once again entered a long period of cultivation. Then, about a year later, Orochimaru came uninvited to Shikatsu Forest. According to Liang Yue's observation, the direction from which he came should have been Raichi Cave. Long time no see, Chunkyu-jun from afar, looking at the thunder firewood that was slowly converging and disappearing behind Liang Yue, a hint of amazement unconsciously flashed in Orochimaru's eyes. Orochimaru? I'm surprised you could find this place after finishing his practice. Liang Yue came to the door and invited Snake Uncle into his temporary hut. It was indeed not easy to find, but I have now returned to the Hidden Leaf Village according to Chun Kyu-jun's request, and in addition to bringing back a group of promising young people, Sasuke has also successfully returned to the village. Now it's time for Chun Kyu-jun to fulfill your promise. Orochimaru wore a smile, his snake eyes filled with anticipation. Oh? You actually returned to the Hidden Leaf Village. Liang Yue was surprised to hear this. I gave them conditions they couldn't refuse, and even invited the Fire Country daimyo to guarantee it. Originally, I didn't plan to trouble Chun Kyu-jun. However, Tsunade seems to have a deep prejudice against me, and the old third Hokage is also hiding in Mount Myaboku to cultivate, just like Chun Kyu-jun. Jiraiya is now training outside with a nine-tailed Jinchuriki, so I had no choice but to come to Chun Kyu-jun myself. Orochimaru's expression remained unchanged, but the arm gripping the armrest seemed slightly stiff. Obviously, after returning home again as a Hidden Leaf ninja, his feelings were completely different from when he was implementing the Hidden Leaf Crush plan. After the two finished speaking, Liang Yue casually threw a kunai to the ground, came to Orochimaru's side, placed his hand on his shoulder, and with a slight tremor, the scene in front of him blurred. The next moment, the two returned to the Hidden Leaf Village Flying Thunder God technique. I didn't expect Chun Kyu-jun to have also learned this ninjutsu. I also researched it for a while back then, but unfortunately, I gave up without making any progress. This technique requires a relatively strong mental arithmetic ability from the practitioner. If you can really cultivate your chakra to the next level and complete the body's strengthening with natural energy, you should be able to practice it. The sunlight was bright, and the two were now at the top of the Hidden Leaf Hokage Rock. From here, the entire Hidden Leaf Village could be seen in its entirety. Liang Yue and Orochimaru quickly jumped off the Hokage Rock and slowly walked towards the Hokage building. By the way, my cultivation method has relatively high requirements for mental state. This is related to your views on chakra and the world. While walking, Liang Yue kindly reminded Snake Uncle because according to his understanding, Snake Uncle's reincarnation jutsu had to be performed every 3 years, and the soul of the host would be continuously worn away during the process. This method originally seemed to have very limited drawbacks. At worst, the resistance to Jinjutsu would become relatively low, but a current situation is that if Liang Yue's martial Dao innate breakthrough method is to be performed, Orochimaru might suffer a bit if his soul and mental strength are weak. Regarding this, I have already heard something about it. I heard that the small tree entwined with flames and lightning behind Chun Kyu-jun is the sublimation and crystallization of mental strength, right? Under the interweaving of thunder and fire, it can actually produce life, and Chun Kyu-jun is truly a genius to be able to master wood release. From this perspective, Orochimaru was silent for a while after hearing this, then directly changed the subject. Your words are not accurate enough. That thunder fire wood thing is actually my understanding of natural things. It's a bit like those monks in the temple who worship Buddha statues all day long. The Buddha statue has become their spiritual sustenance, but I have turned this sustenance into another more practical thing. To put it bluntly, this is a method of visualization. It is equivalent to inviting a kind of thing in nature into your heart. If you can continue to walk down this path, you can also use it to cultivate into the sage mode you mentioned. Speaking of this, Liang Yue suddenly paused and looked at a dark corner on the street before continuing. Like the third Hokage, Jiraiya, and Tsunade, although they have successfully cultivated this sage mode, they have not been able to comprehend the ability to understand natural things like thunder fire wood. As for the mental visualization method, I myself first comprehended the thunder fire tree before indirectly finding a way to absorb natural energy. It's really amazing. Chun Kyu-jun is really a treasure. Your ideas are simply unheard of. It really excites my whole person. Orochimaru really seemed very excited at this time. His tongue had unconsciously stretched out of his mouth, constantly licking his lips. Control yourself a little. This behavior is disgusting. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.